Chapter 61. Was it just to repay a debt of gratitude? Chapter 61. Was it just to repay a debt of gratitude? I will save her. You guys take care, this type of snake wouldn't attack you. Then, Yimo took Kai Wanqing and rushed into the tent. Yimo knew that it wasn't a snake, it was called a bear cockroach. It looked like a snake, but it had 4 legs, and its eyes had a green glow in the dark, just like a wolf. Bear cockroaches were not only extremely fast, but ordinary people couldn't see them at all. Besides, their skin was abnormally tough, and normal attacks wouldn't do any damage to them at all. Moreover, the crucial point was that the bear cockroach was extremely venomous and couldn't compare to any other normal venom. The adult bear cockroach would eventually grow a pair of wings, so this one was obviously still in its adolescent state. However, what surprised Yimo the most was to actually find a bear cockroach on this earth scarce of spirit Kai. The bear cockroach wouldn't attack normal humans. They are only sensitive to plants and things that contained spirit Kai because this type of animal only loved to devour anything containing spirit Kai. Yimo immediately pulled down Kai Wanqing's top, but at this moment, he really didn't have time to worry about other things. Kai Wanqing had 2 holes from the bite on her back. The black Kai had formed a line going up, making it oddly clear on Kai Wanqing's back. Yimo used his cultivated Kai to push out the venomous blood before taking out some herbs and using his cultivated Kai to help her digest the herbs. The poison was finally under control, but Yimo knew that this was only a temporary measure. If the venom couldn't be completely removed, Kai Wanqing still wouldn't be able to survive even for an hour. But what could treat her? Yimo turned Kai Wanqing over, allowing her to lay in his arms while he was worried, thinking of a way to treat her. Kai Wanqing was still unconscious, and although the grey on her face didn't get any deeper, it was still quite obvious. Bear cockroaches liked to devour spirit plants, and the people they bit were not only poisoned but would also lose their essence. It was just like life essence. If a person's life essence completely dissipated, they wouldn't be able to live long even if the poison was cured. Kai Wanqing's case was a typical example of life force gradually dissipating. Even if he forced all the poison out of her body, she wouldn't be able to live. If it was in the cultivation realm, then any spirit pills could cure her, but here, there weren't even spirit herbs, much less spirit pills. Regardless of whether or not she helped him, Kai Wanqing was bitten because of him. If Yimo couldn't save her, his heart wouldn't be at rest. Besides, he had a good impression of Kai Wanqing. If only there were a spirit herb, if there was one, he could use it to recover her life essence, but unfortunately, his silver heartgrass was gone, and the ones he just grew hadn't even germinated yet. After a brief moment, he remembered the section of purple heartvine he had obtained recently and thought that he might still be able to cure Kai Wanqing using it. Thinking that his lucky meeting with a small section of a purple heartvine was going to be eaten by Kai Wanqing, Yimo was a bit unwilling to give it up. After all, if the silver heartgrass couldn't be successfully grown, this vine would be of great use to him. However, thinking about how Kai Wanqing was in this state because of him, Yimo still decided to use the purple heart vine. Anyway, could he really watch her die and not save her when he had the means to? If Shuo Igua didn't mind giving this plant to him, why couldn't he, Yimo, give it to others? Was he, Yimo, a status higher than others? Thinking about this, Yimo felt ashamed of himself. Just when Yimo took out the purple heartvine and was thinking of a way to turn it into a serum for Kai Wanqing, he suddenly remembered that he had only eaten the silver heartgrass for around a month. There would definitely still be some of the medicinal powers of the silver heartgrass remaining in his blood. Plus, even if it wasn't the case, he was a cultivator, and there were constantly spirit Kai in his blood, so it might even have a better effect than the purple heartvine. After all, Kai Wanqing couldn't straight up digest the purple heartvine, and she still needed Yimo's help in digestion, which was too troublesome. Thinking about this, Yimo slit his wrist without hesitation and directed the flow of blood toward Kai Wanqing's mouth. At the same time, he used his cultivated Kai to help Kai Wanqing digest the medicinal powers of his blood. Kai Wanqing's face gradually returned to normal with visible speed. The black lines withdrew along the original track and spurted out from the wound on her back. The black blood was gradually flowing out of the wound until it started turning red. Yimo felt relieved that it had worked. It seemed that the medicinal powers of the silver heartgrass were not completely digested by his body. Kai Wanqing suddenly felt a weird taste and opened her eyes. However, she saw Yimo's wrist trickling blood, and it was directly flowing into her mouth. It scared Kai Wanqing and made her scream as she hurriedly pushed Yimo's wrist away. As Yimo saw that Kai Wanqing was awake, and the venom of the bear cockroach had been cured, he also stopped the blood from flowing from his wrist. "Brother Yi, you made me drink your—" Kai Wanqing didn't dare to finish her sentence in shock. Yimo smiled and said, "It's all right, I often go to the hospital to donate blood. You had lost some blood, so it was necessary for me to donate some blood to you, so you don't need to worry about it. Perhaps I will need blood one day, and you can donate some for me as well." Yimo made it sound simple. It would be too complicated to tell her that there was some part of the silver heart grass remaining in his blood. Besides, she probably wouldn't understand these things that involved life essence and spirit Kai. Although Kai Wanqing didn't react to the situation in time, she knew that being bitten by a snake shouldn't result in loss of blood. Furthermore, even if it was blood donation, it shouldn't be donated in such a way. She felt touched by Yimo donating blood to her. However, she forgot that she received this wound due to Yimo. "Thank you, Brother Yi." Kai Wanqing moved a little and now realized that she was still in Yimo's arms. Her face immediately grew hot. Yimo also realized the situation and hurriedly put Kai Wanqing down. "You're fine now, rest up for a while. That thing is very poisonous, I'll go look for it later." Yimo had a reason to search for that bear cockroach. Since there was a bear cockroach here, it meant that there might be some spirit herbs nearby, and besides, it was too rare to find a bear cockroach on Earth. This thing only usually appeared near places of dense spirit Kai. However, Earth spirit Kai was relatively scarce. Seeing that Kai Wanqing's complexion returned to normal, Yimo reminded her, "Don't do something so dangerous next time. Did you know that I almost wasn't able to save you this time?" Yimo's meaning was that this all could have been avoided. If Kai Wanqing didn't charge over, the bear cockroach wouldn't have been able to land an attack on him. But if he had said this, it would seem a bit hurtful. After all, Kai Wanqing was trying to save him and didn't know that Yimo could dodge it. "No, if it happened again, I would still stop it. If you are poisoned, then it's all over, but if I am, you might still be able to save me." Although Kai Wanqing's voice was low, it was very firm. Yimo was stunned for a moment and felt touched. Then, he immediately said, "Nincompoop. If you are poisoned, I may not be able to save you. Today was very dangerous, you need to remember that next time. What if I couldn't save you?" Kai Wanqing shook her head. "Brother Yi, I don't understand these things. You saved me, I just don't want you to be bitten from the bottom of my heart. Even if you can't save me, I would still do it if something similar happened again." As if scared of Yimo's reproach, her voice was getting smaller and smaller. Yimo sighed as he thought that this girl was really giving people a headache. He even doubted if he made the right choice in staying longer with them. Kai Wanqing's feelings towards him didn't seem to be as simple as repaying gratitude. Chapter 62. Why be used by her? Chapter 62. Why be used by her? When Yimo and Kai Wanqing came out, Lu Lin and the others had been worried sick waiting. They were relieved after seeing both coming out. This 6-man squad had already lost 2 members. If they lost Kai Wanqing here as well, it would be tragic. Besides, Kai Wanqing's identity wasn't ordinary. If something happened, Lu Lin's superior wouldn't be able to shoulder the consequences, much less Lu Lin. Luckily, they were fine now. "Captain Lu, you guys rest for a bit first, I'm going to leave for a while." Yimo didn't wait for the others' reply and just went straight into the forest since he was interested in this bear cockroach. Usually, where the bear cockroach appeared, there were things like spirit herbs, and even if he couldn't find spirit herbs, it would still be good to capture this bear cockroach. Although bear cockroaches weren't spiritual beasts, it could bond with a master because it possessed some self-awareness, unlike other wild beasts that could only be kept as trained animals. Although this bear cockroach was useless to him, he could capture it and give it to Kai Wanqing. Kai Wanqing almost lost her life trying to save him just then. It was appropriate to find her a pet. "Brother Yi, wait for me, I'll go with you." Kai Wanqing grabbed a torch and suddenly followed him. Guoqi was just about to stop Kai Wanqing but was pulled by Lu Lin. "Didn't you see that Kai Wanqing's is quite stuck to Yimo? Her cold personality is because of her family, but Yimo isn't an ordinary person, so he should be able to take care of Kai Wanqing. Don't stop her. Lu Lin paused for a moment then continued, if someone like Yi Mo could join our Eagle Hunter squad, there wouldn't be a squad in the entire army that could triumph against us. Guo Qi shook his head. You said it yourself that he isn't an ordinary person, so I'm certain that he definitely won't join the army. Furthermore, I feel like he isn't someone who likes to be restrained, and perhaps only freedom is best suited for him. After pausing for a moment, Guo Qi continued, he may seem to wear simple clothes and is very casual in his mannerism, however, I believe that he is a proud person. Although his pride isn't like ordinary people's pride which is shown on their face or hidden in their hearts, it is natural, he neither flaunts it nor conceals it. Perhaps even the wealthiest of second-generation youngsters clad in their best designer garments would feel inferior, like a mere side character, standing next to him. Brother Fang, how are you even able to get someone as strong as him to help us? Fang Wei asked with admiration. Ever since Yi Mo saved him, he had a great admiration for him and constantly wanted to become his disciple. Guo Qi smiled and simply answered, I just said that we're all Chinese people, and just like that he agreed. Brother Yi, wait for me. Kai Wanqing called out and followed. Yi Mo stopped and looked at Kai Waning. Why did you come over? This place is quite dark, and the moon isn't especially bright tonight, so it is still quite dangerous here. I'm going out to find something, but I'm coming back later. Your wound just healed, why did you come over? Hurry and go back. Brother Yi, I guess that you definitely won't join our squad afterwards, so, when you leave, I wouldn't know when I would be able to see you again. I want to stay with you for a little while longer. Perhaps due to never having any friends of the opposite sex, Kai Wanqing was greatly dependent on Yi Mo who had saved her life twice in a single day. Yi Mo was astonished for a moment. He felt that Kai Wanqing was over-reliant on him which didn't suit her identity as a soldier. Perhaps she went to the army due to other reasons, but he didn't want to ask about that at this point. He just wanted to say idiot, I can come back and see you later, but when the words came to his mouth, he stopped. Would he really come back to see her after he left? That was impossible. His and Kai Wanqing's path were completely different. They had no intersections in life, how could they see each other again? Thinking about this, Yi Mo sighed and said, fine, follow me then. After all, if he really captured the bear cockroach, he was going to give it to Kai Wanqing, and he had to make the ownership bond with Kai Wanqing. Thanks, Brother Yi. Then, she excitedly grabbed Yi Mo's arm, and Yi Mo simply shook his head. Kai Wanqing was obviously still a naive girl, so it should have been really hard for her to come to the army and keep a cold face on every day. Perhaps, school life was the most suitable for her. How many years have you been in the army? Why don't you go to school anymore? Yi Mo asked. In my second year of university, my grandpa forced me to marry a person I didn't like. I refused, but that person came to my school, and when I tried to speak about it to my father, he actually agreed with grandpa. So, I ran out secretly to find Uncle Jiang and joined the army. I never went back again, Kai Wanqing said dejectedly. Yi Mo was speechless. Why did these people all like to use marriage to strengthen their power? No matter where it was, these things continued to happen. But you can't stay in the army for your whole life, can you? When you go back, you will still be forced into decisions by your dad and granddad, Yi Mo said. I don't want to go back, my mom often comes to see me, and she also helped me open. Kai Wanqing shut her mouth just in time. She almost said that the company she wanted Yi Mo to go earlier was hers and not her cousin. Then, she suddenly asked, Brother Yi, someone as outstanding as you should have a girlfriend already, right? Yi Mo smiled as he said, I'm a jobless wandering person. How can I be outstanding? Girlfriend? I don't have one, but I do have a wife, you're married? Kai Wanqing suddenly felt hollow in her heart, a sudden sense of loss that just couldn't be described. Yi Mo didn't notice Kai Wanqing's state and explained, she should be about the same as you, she didn't want to marry someone else, so she faked her marriage to me. I'm just helping her out. If one day you want me to help you, I would be happy to do so, Yi Mo laughed at himself. What? Brother Yi, you have a fake marriage, and that woman is using you. How could there be such a bad woman? Kai Wanqing immediately felt indignant upon hearing this. A woman would even use someone like Brother Yi, she thought and said, "Brother Yi, why would you let yourself be used by her? Just ignore such women. Why be used by her?" Yi Mo's complexion suddenly seemed gloomy. He thought about his poor master Luo Ying and didn't know how she was doing now. As long as there was the slightest sliver of Luo Ying's image, he was willing to be used. The reason he helped Ning Qingxue might be hidden in the depth of his heart, but he hoped that if one day his master was in trouble, there would be someone like him willing to help her. "Sorry, Brother Yi, I won't ask you." Kai Wanqing saw Yi Mo's look of melancholy and immediately understood that he must have had some special reason to do so. "Chem?" Yi Mo was surprised as he bent over and looked at a mushroom that was partly consumed. There really was spirit herbs here. Although the Yi mushrooms weren't spirit herbs, they still contained small amounts of spirit Kai which seemed to have attracted the bear cockroach. "What's wrong, Brother Yi?" Kai Wanqing saw Yi Mo stop and asked. "Don't say a word, I can already see it." Yi Mo's spirit sense locked onto the bear cockroach a few meters away. It had also obviously noticed Yi Mo, however, it didn't move, as it seemed to be sure that Yi Mo wouldn't be able to discover him no matter what and therefore wasn't scared. Chapter 63, Departure. Chapter 63, Departure. Wanqing, come to my left side. Yi Mo made Kai Wanqing move to his left side because the right side was where the bear cockroach was hiding. This guy was hiding under a rock with his eyes staring at Yi Mo and Kai Wanqing. Not only did he not escape, but he was instead trying to find an opportunity to attack Yi Mo. Of course, Kai Wanqing didn't know what Yi Mo had meant, but since Yi Mo told her to go left, she immediately went on the other side. Yi Mo knew that the bear cockroach was sly, so he pulled Kai Wanqing, pretending not to see it moving past by its side. The bear cockroach saw Yi Mo showing his back, so it slowly moved closer toward him and was prepared to suddenly attack him when he was the closest possible to its position. "Why being so careful?" Kai Wanqing asked quietly. Yi Mo didn't answer but suddenly turned and made a grabbing move with his hands in mid-air. His movements were extremely fast, so much so that Kai Wanqing wasn't even able to react. "Gee!" With a sharp shriek, the bear cockroach that jumped and attacked Yi Mo was caught in his hands in mid-air, as though it had placed itself there. If Yi Mo didn't use some Kai in his hands, he really wouldn't have been able to catch this fast creature. Feeling the intense struggle of the bear cockroach, Yi Mo immediately said, "Wanqing, hurry up and bite open the tip of your finger. Quick, this thing is really strong." The bear cockroach knew it was tricked and struggled more fiercely. If he didn't catch it with his own hands, Yi Mo definitely wouldn't have thought that it could have such power, and this was only a young bear cockroach. Kai Wanqing saw the green eye and immediately felt scared. Cold sweat trickled down her body. She wasn't really scared about herself, but about Yi Mo getting bitten. However, hearing Yi Mo's yell, she quickly reacted and, although she didn't know the reason why, she still quickly bit open her finger. Meanwhile, Yi Mo took out a knife and slit open a gash in the middle of its head. As blood trickled out, Yi Mo held Kai Wanqing's finger and dropped the blood from her fingertip into the gash. His hands continuously made different hand signs, as though he was using some magical art on the little snake-like creature. Kai Wanqing looked at Yi Mo's actions in shock and didn't dare to speak. She could already see the sweat beads trickle from Yi Mo's forehead and wanted to wipe them for Yi Mo, but she was scared that she would interrupt him, especially since she had no idea what Yi Mo was doing. His hand gestures seemed mysterious, as though it was mystical. However, Kai Wanqing believed in him. The struggling bear cockroach gradually calmed down before eventually stopping. After being dropped by Yi Mo, it immediately ran towards Kai Wanqing's feet, but not only that, it even used its sharp head and rubbed itself against Kai Wanqing's shoe as though a sign of intimacy. Kai Wanqing was just staring tensely at Yi Mo and didn't expect this snake to run over so suddenly and was evidently frightened. Luckily, Yi Mo's voice resounded in time. "Now, it has been subdued by me, but because you don't have a spirit sense, you can only make it understand you through words. Don't worry, it won't attack anyone unless you give the order to." Yi Mo knew Kai Wanqing wasn't a cultivator and, therefore, didn't have a spirit sense, so although he made the bear cockroach sign a slave pact with her, she could only command it through words. It would take a long time for her to be able to command it only with her will. Brother Yi, how do you know something like this? It sounds weird and mystical. As Kai Wanqing saw that the bear cockroach really didn't seem to have the intention to attack her, she was finally able to calm her heart. Yimo smiled and said, "This is the method used amongst common people, and I have learned a bit of it. However, you can't train every animal with this, it's only doable for a few special animals, and this bear cockroach is one of them." Bear cockroach? Kai Wanqing didn't think that this snake-looking thing had such a strange name. "I'll call it Little Wolf from now on. It won't bite others, right?" Kai Wanqing suddenly found it interesting but was still worried about the ferocity of the bear cockroach. Not everyone could save someone bitten by that creature like Yimo did with her. It won't. Yimo knew that even without taming it, it wouldn't bite ordinary people as it was mostly attracted to Kai, much less after signing the slave pact with her. He thought for a moment and continued, "From now on, you just need to feed it some bamboo shoots, or you can allow it to find food itself. Most people wouldn't even be able to shadow of the bear cockroach anyway." Yimo and Kai Wanqing returned to the campsite, and when the others saw the creature, they were amazed that Yimo was able to capture such a strong pet for Kai Wanqing. They kept observing the bear cockroach, and eventually, Lu Lin suggested that Kai Wanqing should make a small linen bag to keep the bear cockroach close to her. Originally, Yimo was planning to leave after accompanying them out of the forest. However, because of Kai Wanqing, Yimo didn't even mention leaving once but simply continued to follow the group. Although Kai Wanqing really liked staying on Yimo's back, she had completely recovered now and felt embarrassed to continue staying on his back, so she got off and walked herself. In the next few days, Yimo would teach some techniques to Fang Wei each day and, later on, Guiqi and Lu Lin also came to learn. The things Yimo taught were all easy to learn and very practical. He even taught them some simple breathing techniques. Although they wouldn't be able to cultivate Kai with this, if they persisted for some time, they would be able to produce some inner force. "Sister Kai, why don't you come and learn?" That night, after Guiqi had set up a simple place for them to stay and the time to learn from Yimo was coming, since Fang Wei saw that Kai Wanqing wasn't coming, he invited her. Lu Lin smacked Fang Wei on the head. "Wanqing will be taught privately by Yimo, what are you blabbering about?" Kai Wanqing, who was just playing with Little Wolf, immediately blushed. She looked at Yimo once but didn't even try to explain anything. Yimo smiled faintly but didn't rebuke Lu Lin's words. However, he didn't have the intentions of teaching Kai Wanqing privately. Maybe if there were a pen and some paper, he would probably write some breathing techniques for her, but since there weren't any, he gave up on the thought. Yimo had a great impression of Kai Wanqing since she was willing to risk her life to save him. Besides, even though Kai Wanqing was in the army, she seemed to stick to him quite heavily. However, only Yimo knew that nothing would happen between him and Kai Wanqing as he already had Luo Ying in his heart, and no matter how extraordinary other girls were, they wouldn't be able to capture his heart. The only reason he caught a bear cockroach for her was to repay her for saving his life. Nevertheless, the bear cockroach was quite an important thing to Yimo now since after all, his power wasn't quite high right now, and a lot of people were stronger than him. With the help of bear cockroach, he would be much safer. However, in order to repay Kai Wanqing's goodwill, he still gave it to her. On the 11th day, this temporary team had finally encountered people who had come to meet the squad, therefore, Yimo was going to bid them farewell. "Brother Yi, if you have time, you really need to remember to help my cousin at Luo Kang." Kai Wanqing couldn't let him go the most and felt as though she lost something when Yimo left. However, she didn't have any valid reason to make him stay. She could only hope that Yimo would go to the company her mother gave her and, perhaps she would find an opportunity to leave the army and go back there too. Yimo felt helpless as he saw Kai Wanqing's expectant look. He couldn't bear to disappoint her, so he could only nod to agree. However, he knew that after separating with them this time, it would probably be very hard for them to see each other again because he needed at least a few years' time to cultivate his silver heart grass. Seeing Yimo's back gradually disappear into the forest, Kai Wanqing suddenly felt a deep sense of loss and disappointment in her heart. Her mood reached rock bottom once again. Chapter 64. Yimo's Rage. Chapter 64. Yimo's Rage. When Yimo went back to Flowing Snake by himself, his speed was a lot faster. Even adding the time when he had to go out of his way to collect some herbs, he only spent 3 days to get back to his temporary residence in Flowing Snake. However, The scene that entered his eyes as he arrived infuriated him. It had only been 20 days, but his place had been ruined. The walls were broken everywhere, but the most important part was the patch of land where he had plowed to grow his silver heartgrass was utterly destroyed. Crack, Emo kicked a large rock with his feet and, using his kai, the rock was actually shattered into countless pieces. His most valuable possession was the silver heartgrass, and he had tried to cultivate 19 seeds here. However, this place had been decimated just like this. What was Fang Nan doing? Just when Emo was prepared to look for an explanation from Fang Nan, a person quickly ran over. This individual had seen Emo standing in front of the ragged pagoda and hurried over and respectfully said, "Brother Yi, Brother Nan made me wait here for you. You're finally back." This was a youth in his 20s and Emo still remembered him. He was called Rock and was the one who stood behind Fang Nan when Emo first went to see him. Emo suppressed the anger inside his heart. The silver heartgrass was more important than anything, but now, half of it was gone. How could he not be angry? However, he wasn't a person to go into a tantrum before fully understanding the situation, but someone will pay with his life for his silver heartgrass. Seeing the dark look on Emo's face, he quickly said, "Brother Yi, after you left, Brother Nan and another big gang in Flowing Snake, the Yu Gang, fought over the distribution of benefits of those left behind by the 13 turbos. Originally, Brother Nan wouldn't be afraid of the Yu Gang. However, the Yu Gang went against the rules and rallied with the Fei Gang to ambush our Pu Dao clan. Brother Nan was heavily wounded and taken here by our brothers to recover. However, he was still attacked by the Yu and Fei Gang. In the end, only a few brothers and Nang brother made it out. Nang brother told me to wait here for Brother Yi to apologize to you." Emo listened through Rock's words with a pale face, not replying for a long time. He understood that if Fang Nan didn't come here, perhaps his silver heartgrass wouldn't have been destroyed, so maybe Fang Nan was using this method to force Emo to help him out. If Fang Nan was actually trying to make Emo angry at the Yu Gang so he would destroy them, then, he really wouldn't mind annihilating Pu Dao clan too. Emo walked into the yard. That patch of land was trampled all over, but Emo still managed to find a few seeds. Seeing those seeds made Emo calmer. However, he realized that even if that event didn't happen, he wouldn't be able to grow the silver heartgrass here because the few seeds he had found were all rotten and didn't have any signs of germination. It seemed that this silver heartgrass could only be cultivated in certain places. He didn't even know why the place he had been living at before could grow a silver heartgrass. "Take me to Fang Nan," Emo turned around and said coldly to Rock. His face had returned to complete calm. Fang Nan was extremely devastated right now and was hiding in a far-off cave. Including Rock, only 6 people were remaining. As he saw Emo walking in, Fang Nan struggled to get up with a face filled with guilt. From Emo's attitude toward the place, he could see how important it was for him, yet not only was he unable to guard it, but the place was also destroyed because of him. If something similar were to happen again, he would never allow his brothers to take him there to hide. Seeing Fang Nan struggling to get up with guilt in his eyes, Emo only waved his hand. "This isn't your fault, let me have a look at your wound first." Fang Nan had been injured during a gunfight. Although he was shot twice, it was not a problem for Emo to heal him at all and, in less than half an hour, he had already treated Fang Nan's wounds completely. "I'm going to have a look around Flowing Snake to see who destroyed my stuff. You can rest up here in the meantime, you will be able to return to Flowing Snake at night." When he saw that Fang Nan was better, Emo stood up and, as he was about to leave, the tone he expressed himself with made everyone who heard him frigid. Fang Nan immediately said, "Brother Yi, this thing was caused by me, so even if I die, I can't let you go to Flowing Snake while I sleep here." Emo smiled faintly. "In that case, you can come with me." To him, these gangs formed by desperados really didn't have nothing to do with him. There wouldn't be a problem even if Fang Nan came with him. Flowing Snake. Inside the semicircle stone house that originally belonged to Fang Nan, the Yu Gang and the Fei Gang that had encircled the border of China were also here. The big boss of the Yu Gang spoke in a fluent Chinese. "I've long despised that Fang Nan from the Pu Dao clan. Although we didn't manage to kill him, we kicked him out of Flowing Snake this time, which makes me feel at ease. We were really fortunate to have Boss Pu this time. Come, with this glass, I now represent the Yu gang to toast in your honor. All right, but we will also be living in Flowing Snake in the future, and we hope Supreme Chancellor Wang will help us out a little. The boss of the Fei gang sitting on the opposite side of the Yu gang with black skin. Although he was speaking Chinese, he was stuttering a little. He obviously knew that he wouldn't be able to live at Flowing Snake if he couldn't even speak Chinese. Supreme Chancellor Wang smiled and replied, "No worries, no worries. We each take half of the land and business left behind by Fang Nan since it is what we had already agreed beforehand." This Supreme Chancellor Wang was the leader of the Yu gang, Wang Xian. He didn't like to be referred to as gang leader and instead preferred the title Supreme Chancellor. Under such discussions, the atmosphere in the room was extremely cheerful. Thud. Thud. However, two discordant sounds disrupted the scene as two bodies fell on the table where the two gang leaders had just drunk a toast. These were the bodies of the two guards outside. In that instant, the entire room became deadly silent, yet quickly the tens of people in the room reacted and started flourishing their weapons, preparing for the upcoming battle. "Who are you? Why did you kill my men for no reason?" Supreme Chancellor Wang had his hands on his pistol. No matter what, this person killed his men, so he was going to make him pay for it. Yimo sneered and scanned the people in the room. There were about 40 to 50 people, with more than 10 people with a black skin and 2 were white. After taking a glance at the people in the room, he simply asked, "Did you destroy the temple I was living at?" He actually came for a broken-down pagoda. The face of Supreme Chancellor Wang darkened and pulled out his hand as he yelled, "Brothers, fire! Finish this son of a b***tch." Chapter 65. What is really cruel? Chapter 65. What is really cruel? Thud. 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 4 consecutive sounds of broken bones could be heard as the 4 quickest men who charged at Yi Mo were kicked flying. It would be extremely hard to tell which one received the first kick, and even those with good eyes were only able to see a few blurred kicks. The rest of the men who wanted to charge up were knocked by these 4 people and crashed into the stone wall. Everyone else froze, wondering how the man could be so strong as the damages dealt were already so big. A youth behind the leader of the Yu gang reacted quickly by taking out a gun with the intent to shoot at Yi Mo. However, a light gust of wind blew past him and, before his fingers could even touch the trigger, there was a bloody hole on his forehead as he collapsed on the ground and died with his eyes wide open. Silence. At this moment, no one even dared to make the slightest move. This man came to the door and killed 5 people in a few breaths of time, and this didn't even include the 2 he had killed at the door before. He killed that many people but they didn't even see him move once. The leader of the Yu gang finally caught on the situation. He realized that this young man was a dangerous one and was definitely one of these special masters, so he hurriedly said, "Friend, there must be a misunderstanding between us. Although we damaged that pagoda, we really didn't know that place was yours. Please, I'm willing to pay double for your losses." Yimo sneered and raised his hand. The 2 black men from the Yu gang who wanted to open fire had suddenly a hole appearing in each of their foreheads as they fell to their death. Meanwhile, the pistols in their hands flew out a long distance away. This time, Wang Xian managed to catch a glimpse of his movement. The young man barely raised his hands, but this simple movement resulted in 2 immediate deaths. The objects he shot out seemed to be faster than bullets. This person was too strong. "Pay for my losses. Can you even afford it? Besides, you hurt my friend Fang Nan and killed his men. Even if you could afford it, I'll make you go back to where you came from today." Yimo didn't waste any more time talking as the metal nails in his hands flew out like hail. There were a lot of people, and Yimo's spirit sense wasn't powerful enough right now. If everyone attacked him at the same time, his spirit sense wouldn't be able to cover it all, and he might be injured. Since he was planning to fight anyway, he might as well get rid of a few men before they could react. "Brothers, kill him." In an extremely short period of time, more than 10 people had already died. After that yell, Wang Xian hid behind the others and looked for a window from which he could escape from. Wang Xian had initially thought that this stone house was grandiose, but because of the situation they were in right now, it became the place he loathed the most. If it had been some other house, there would probably have been a back door or a hidden passage in case of an emergency like this. However, not only there weren't a single door he could use to escape, but the windows inside that stone house were so tight that it would be extremely complicated for a man to go through. His only choice was to try pulling out one of the windows, but even after a long time, he still wasn't able to move it. Blood was spewed, and the sound of gunshots and knives clashing into each other was resounding all over the stone house. The scene quickly erupted into pandemonium. However, Yimo guarded the door and didn't let a single person escape. Although Yimo had a spirit sense and he attacked very fast, usually killing those with guns first while dodging the flying knives, there were simply too many people attacking him. His spirit sense couldn't cover it all, and he wasn't able to avoid one bullet that lodged itself in his leg. However, at the same time he had been shot, the shooter was killed by Yimo. Although the gun wound wasn't serious enough to threaten his life, it seriously annoyed Yimo, and the metal nails started to fly out even faster. A few minutes later, the rustling noise in the room stopped. Other than Wang Xian, who was still trying to pick the window open, even the leader of the Yu gang was laying on the ground, dead. The stone house was full of bodies, and yet, there weren't much bloodstains. This was because Yimo always took care of them with one nail. Yimo took out the bullet lodged in his leg and treated his wound. Then, he stared coldly at Wang Xian near the window and said, "I don't think you need to try anymore. Do you think you can still escape now?" Hearing Yimo's words, Wang Xian suddenly looked behind him. Immediately, his hands and feet went cold. A single thought lingered in his mind: what sort of person did I offend? More than 40 people against one, but none of them lived. Well, it's more like other than him, everyone else had been killed. It took him a long time before he could even say another word. "Please, have mercy on me. I'm willing to give you everything I have, and I am also willing to be your subordinate." Wang Xian had killed countless people, but when it was his turn, he finally realized death was such a scary thing. "Fang Nan, I'll leave this to you. You can deal with this one." Yimo turned back to leave. Fang Nan and a few of his henchmen were waiting outside nervously, and when he heard Yimo calling out to him, he asked his men to help him go inside. At this moment, Yimo had already left. Fang Nan looked at the scene in the room and couldn't close his mouth for a long time. The room was full of bodies, except for Wang Xian, who was shaking right now. Fang Nan suddenly felt a cold shiver down his back as he thought, "What is cruel? This is really cruel." He had killed countless people but had never killed this much by himself, and yet, Yimo left calmly as though nothing had happened. For him, murder was as simple as breathing. No wonder he scared so much someone as ruthless as Wang Xian that he couldn't stop shivering. When he killed, it was the brawls between gangs. It appeared to be very scary with blood flying around, but they were mostly light wounds, and not a lot of people died. There never had been someone who could kill the opponent's entire gang. However, Yimo had killed all of these people and yet still appeared like usual, as though he had just killed a few chickens. His face remained expressionless. Then, Fang Nan suddenly thought of the day when Yimo came to this place with him, and sweat ran down his back. If he had just acted a little tougher that day and had some bad intentions, there wouldn't be a Fang Nan in this world. Fang Nan had never seen someone so strong. At the same time, he had never seen someone so ruthless. Luckily, he respected Yimo from the bottom of his heart and had tried to be friends with him. Otherwise, Fang Nan didn't even dare to think about it. "Leader Fang, have mercy. I'm willing to give you all of my assets. I just want you to spare my life." Wang Xian's plea interrupted Fang Nan's contemplation. "Immediately kill this bastard and clean up the bodies in the room. Rock, immediately come with me to see Brother Yi." Fang Nan left the things here to his men as he only wanted to check on Yimo. Brother Yi. Fang Nan was carried by 2 men as he came to Yimo and called out to him respectfully. Originally, Yimo was just someone strong and mysterious in Fang Nan's eyes, who deserved his respect, but now, Yimo was more someone he feared. "Fang Nan," Yimo seemed to be deep in thought. "Brother Yi, I'm here." Fang Nan hurriedly replied. Thinking of a moment, Yimo said, "Originally, I was planning to live here for a while, but I didn't think that some things wouldn't go according to plan. So, I will simply leave." "Brother Yi, you're leaving? I can immediately help you build back the place that was destroyed," Fang Nan quickly said. He thought that Yimo was leaving because the pagoda was destroyed. Yimo waved his hand. "Fang Nan, right now, You decide what happens in Flowing Snake. I know what you do to make a living, but don't cross the line. As for blocking the road and robbing, don't do it if you can. Business is easy at the national border, however, I hope you won't do any drug business. These sorts of things harm only yourself and the others. This is all I have to say, perhaps I will come back one day. After finishing, Yimo turned to leave without the slightest hesitation. He didn't want to stay at a place where the silver heart grass couldn't grow. Even if he had to hide from the Song family, he wouldn't do it at the price of inhibiting the progress of his cultivation. Fang Nan was a decent person and helped him out quite a lot, but if he couldn't even control Flowing Snake in its current state, then he wouldn't have the right to stay here. After Yi Mo walked out a long distance, Fang Nan finally awoke and said, "Brother Yi, I definitely will do as you say." Yi Mo didn't ask him for someone to escort him back, so he didn't dare to make that decision himself. Chapter 66. Where did he go? Chapter 66. Where did he go? Ning Qingxue had already bought the place where Yi Mo used to live before. She felt that staying in Yu State was a torment and wanted to find Yi Mo, but she had no idea where he went. Ning Qingxue, who could no longer remain in Yu State, returned to Ninghai, and although she came back to this small yard once again and the place didn't change, the person wasn't there anymore. Xu Wei didn't know that the property had been bought by Ning Qingxue and still lived in her original room. However, recently, there were people constantly questioning her and investigating the surrounding, and eventually, they even took away all the surveillance computers. Xu Wei had a feeling that this was related to Yi Mo. Thinking back to the time she spent with Yi Mo together, she just remembered that she didn't even know what Yi Mo did. Xu Wei, who just opened the door and was prepared to go out shopping, suddenly saw Ning Qingxue standing at the doorway by herself. She was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously, "What are you doing here?" Ning Qingxue knew that Xu Wei held a negative opinion of her, but she didn't feel that Xu Wei was wrong. In her opinion, her understanding of Yi Mo was even less than Xu Wei. "I'm living here because the rental period isn't over." Ning Qingxue didn't want to let her know that she had bought the house. If she did say it, then Xu Wei would probably move out of here immediately. However, Ning Qingxue wanted things to be the same as they had been before, yet, she knew this was impossible. Even if everything else was the same as the original, Yi Mo was no longer here. Xu Wei wanted to say something to Ning Qingxue, but she didn't know what Yi Mo and Ning Qingxue's relationship was like. Besides, Yi Mo did pay for a year's rent here, so she didn't say anything in the end. However, she didn't want to stay any longer, so she left to pick up some groceries. Ning Qingxue went back to the room, looking at the place that looked exactly the same as before, which left her with an indescribable feeling of sadness. That bed, she was even laying down with Yi Mo and took photos on it. She had even tried to go farther into the act, which had even been noticed by Li Mumei at the time. Was that feeling before her true intentions? After sitting on the bed for a while, Ning Qingxue cleaned up the room, leaving everything exactly where they were. However, Yi Mo's small medical case was still in her luggage. For her, that was perhaps the last thing that Yi Mo left behind. She opened up Yi Mo's medical case again, and finally, she couldn't resist to take out Yi Mo's letter anymore. She had always resisted the temptation of opening it, but this time, after coming back to the place where she had lived with Yi Mo, the temptation was too strong for her. As soon as she opened it, a beautiful yet strong handwriting entered her eyes. Ning Qingxue didn't think Yi Mo's handwriting would look so bold as if it would come out of the paper. "Hello Xiao, I left this letter for you before I left. Originally, there were some things I wanted to give you, but you hadn't been to school lately. Coming here, I was a lonely person, and you were my only friend. I was kicked out of my family and my original father-in-law had broken off the engagement in front of everyone. The only friend that hadn't left me was you, so I consider you as my true friend. In fact, the thing I'm most grateful for was that day when you woke me up. If you hadn't done it, perhaps I would never have been able to wake up ever again. Sigh, I don't have a place to live anymore for these past few days, so it's inconvenient to write, but when I have found a place to settle down again, I'll write another letter to you. This is it for now." The letter stopped suddenly, but Ning Qingxue knew that the reason Yi Mo didn't have a place to live was because of her and felt even gloomier. He was a lonely person, but she had hurt him even more. Now, She was also a lonely person. Ning Qingxue packed up the things and left the room. Xu Wei had come back but went to wash the veggies and didn't talk to Ning Qingxue anymore. Ning Qingxue walked to the flower pots where Yi Mo grew flowers in the backyard. She wanted to care for this place and grow some flowers too. A fresh bud made Ning Qingxue look at it for a long time. The place where his small bud grew was the place where the silver heart grass grew before. Ning Qingxue remembered that the grass with a silver color in the middle was cherished greatly by Yi Mo, but also remembered that after the grass had disappeared, Yi Mo was gone as well. Was this bud that grass from before? Ning Qingxue once again carefully fenced up the surrounding of this grass, creating a protection that looked exactly like the one Yi Mo made before. No matter whether this grass was the same one Yi Mo grew before, Ning Qingxue decided she would care for it because its place was the same as that plant from before. Xu Wei had cooked food and, when she saw that Ning Qingxue was still taking care of the flowers in the garden, she felt intrigued. Was her relationship with Yi Mo really more than ordinary? Otherwise, why would their interests be so similar? I've already cooked some food, how about you eat here as well? Xu Wei had prepared food and said to Ning Qingxue, who was still doing gardening. Thank you, I'm not very hungry, Ning Qingxue replied, but suddenly after thinking for a while, she asked, Xu Wei, did Yi Mo eat with you frequently? Yi Mo? Xu Wei didn't know why Ning Qingxue would ask this, but she still answered, he only ate once with me and said that he was going to invite me out to eat. But now, he still hasn't invited me and left without a notice. By the way, Ning Qingxue, what's your relationship with Yi Mo? Ning Qingxue could say another word. Yeah, what was her relationship with Yi Mo? They were no longer engaged since the marriage was a fake. She had no relationship with Yi Mo at all now, so what was she doing here? After a week, Xu Wei astoundingly discovered that Ning Qingxue's lifestyle was shocking similar to Yi Mo's. They were both very shy, and almost never went out. Furthermore, they had a similarity which was their love of growing flowers. Ning Qingxue often watched beside the flower pots, and when she did, it was usually the whole day and actually didn't feel bored. The only difference was when Yi Mo lived here before, there was basically no one who came, but after Ning Qingxue lived here, that Li Mumei came quite a few times and even someone called Su Jingwen came. Su Jingwen's beauty also gave Xu Wei a little shock. She didn't know why there were suddenly so many beautiful women coming. In a private mansion of the Song family in Beijing, the manager of external matters, Song Hai, was immersed in staring at a map. A few days ago, he received a report saying that a youth looking strikingly similar to Yi Mo went into the town of Fengtang and went on a bus leaving toward Qi City. However, according to the driver, that person got off before even reaching Qi City. The place he got off was approximately in the Guixiong mountain range. However, the trail was cut off here once again. What Song Hai was staring at right now was the map of the Guixiong mountain range. This place was full of forests and mountains. If Yi Mo was really hiding there, it would be quite troublesome to find him. Ring, ring, Song Hai's phone rang and broke his train of thought. Song Hai frowned. He had exhausted himself mentally recently trying to find Yi Mo, and a phone call at this time made him feel uncomfortable. What is it? Song Hai picked up the phone and asked impatiently. Master Hai, Ning Qingxue from the Ning family had come to Ning Hai and moved into Yi Mo's previous home. What do we do now? Master Hai, please enlighten us. The phone came from the people he sent to Ning Hai in order to watch out for Yi Mo. However, he didn't think that they would be surveilling Ning Qingxue instead of Yi Mo. Song Hai rubbed his head and replied after a while, keep an eye on her but don't make any move yet. If there still isn't any news in a few days, find a few hoodlums and take her away. Yes, Master Hai, a very straightforward voice responded. Song Hai put down the phone and sneered as he talked to himself, I won't touch the Ning family for now, but can't I touch you Ning Qingxue? You will see what happens next. Notes. 1. As a reminder, zhai means the habit of staying home constantly and not going out. You can find a similar term in a few Japanese novels. Hikikomori. Chapter 67. Injury. Chapter 67. Injury. Ning Qingxue woke up later than Xu Wei each day. But when Ning Qingxue woke up this morning to clean herself, she discovered that Xu Wei didn't go to work, so she couldn't help but to ask, Xu Wei, you're not working today? Today's a rest day, Qingxue. Don't you get bored looking at those flowers all day long? Due to having the experience of living together for a week, Xu Wei and Ning Qingxue gradually got to know each other, so Xu Wei wasn't as cold as she had been at the start. Ning Qingxue shook her head. Nope, I feel great looking at them growing each day. Xu Wei was amazed for a moment as she really couldn't understand Ning Qingxue's actions, since even when Yi Mo was growing these flowers, he wasn't as much into this as her. At most, he spent some time of the day to look after it, and the rest of the time, he spent it on other things. Xu Wei, who was just about to say something, was frightened by the door that was suddenly bumped open and dropped the tub in her hands. Two ferocious-looking men charged in but were surprised to see the frightened Xu Wei, as they didn't expect that the person living with Ning Qingxue didn't go to work that day. However, their surprise was gone in a flash, and they didn't look at her anymore. *TCH, you deceived us and stole my money, and now you're hiding here. Come, go back with me. One man was going to pull Ning Qingxue, who wanted to dodge, but she didn't expect this man to take out a wooden stick with the intent to swing it toward a flower pot. Meanwhile, he was still yelling, "How dare you stole my money and hide here to grow flowers? I'm going to smash all of them." No. Ning Qingxue saw the stick was about to hit one of the flower pots, and with that strike, even a metal flower pot would be shattered. She was so scared that she didn't even think before she just put herself in front of the flower pots. Puff. The stick directly hit on Ning Qingxue's unprotected back. Spew. Ning Qingxue spewed out a mouthful of blood on the flower pots and fainted immediately. Xu Wei screamed and immediately tried to call the police. The two men didn't think that this would happen. They swung using their full strength with the intent to destroy a flower pot, so the consequences would be different when that stick hit on a woman. His orders were to simply take away this woman, but they didn't think that this woman would block a stick from him for a flower pot. The men saw that things went out of control, so they immediately looked at each other and left in a rush. Even when the police, Li Mumei, and Su Jingwen all came, Ning Qingxue still didn't wake up. Fractured spinal bone, 60% of the ribs broken, heavy damage to the heart and lungs. Even if we do everything we can, she would only have 3 years to live at best, and she would be sleeping on a bed most of the time. If we don't treat her, she barely has a month to live. This was the conclusion drawn by the specialists in Ninghai's best hospital. Even if I go bankrupt, I will make the perpetrator pay. Ning Zhongfei was furious. Ning Qingxue was his only daughter, and for her, he was even willing to break out with his father and his brothers. But now, his daughter was beaten to the ground. A 30-or-so-year-old looking woman just held Ning Qingxue's hand and cried. She was Ning Qingxue's mother, Lan Yu. "Qingxue, I won't let you be in this state without doing nothing." After crying for a while, Lan Yu stood up and rubbed her red eyes. She looked at her husband and said, "I will find Su Su and help Qingxue exact revenge. Even if the Song family was more powerful than the heavens, I wouldn't let this pass." Previously, every time his wife had talked about Su Su, Ning Zhongfei would try to persuade her, saying that Su Su was in the hidden power factions, and it wasn't suitable for her to come out. However, this time, Ning Zhongfei surprisingly didn't say anything. He just nodded with a stern face and said, "No matter the costs, we can't let Qingxue be treated like this." "Mom," Ning Qingxue opened her eyes for the first time, but as she saw that she was laying in a white room, she felt a heart-wrenching pain. "Qingxue, you're awake." Lan Yu hurried over and grabbed her daughter's hand. "I'm hurting so much," Ning Qingxue spoke, and sweat immediately cascaded down her face. Lan Yang felt pain in her heart as she knew that her daughter was suffering, not just physically, but inside her heart too. At this moment, she was hoping to be the one laying on the bed instead of her daughter. However, she could only console her. "Qingxue, don't be afraid, Mom will cure you." Ning Qingxue shook her head with a struggle. "I want to go home, Mom, take me to that yard. I know myself, I don't want treatment." Ning Qingxue was clear in her heart. With her injuries, even if she was cured, she would be laying on a bed for the rest of her life, in the best-case scenario. She harbored the will to die and didn't want to stay in the hospital. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to see Yi Mo once before she died and apologize in front of his face. "Qingxue, don't be impulsive. Listen to your mom, stay in the hospital, the doctors will definitely treat you. Rest assured, Mom will stay here with you. How could Lan Yu not know what her daughter was thinking? Her heart felt like it was getting sliced. Ning Qingxue wanted to shake her head, but she felt a sudden immense pain. However, she bit her teeth and said, Mom, can't you let me die with no regrets? I just want to return to that house. Take me back. I'm begging you. She breathed and said, Mom, give me that little case. After she said that, Ning Qingxue closed her eyes. Her pain no longer allowed her to continue talking, and she fainted once again. Lan Yu stood up and wiped the tears from her eyes. Zhongfei, why does Qingxue want to live in that house ever since she came back? What exactly happened between her and Yi Mo? Ning Zhongfei shook his head and said after a while, this is our daughter's last wish, and since we can't save her completely in the hospital, we should send her back to that house. We'll do everything we can to find the best doctors in the meanwhile. As long as there's even a sliver of hope, I don't want to give up. Put that case beside her bed so she won't miss it when she wakes up. Lan Yu nodded and agreed with her husband's opinion. Yi Mo didn't go straight to Luo Kang like Kai Wanqing had recommended. He wanted to see if he could find a job himself. If he really couldn't, then he would go work at Kai Wanqing's cousin's company. However, before this, he had to go to Ninghai and take away some soil from the flower pot in that house and take away his medical case. The reason he wanted to take some soil was for analysis. He wanted to find a laboratory and ask them to analyze the compound of the earth to understand as to why it could let the silver heartgrass grow but not with the soil in flowing snake. Returning to Ninghai, Yi Mo estimated that at this time, Xu Wei was probably still at work, so he sneaked into the house. But when Yi Mo walked beside the flower pots, there was a heart-wrenching blood stain. Although it was almost dry, it was obvious that it didn't happen long ago. Why was there so much blood on this flower pot? Chapter 68, Yi Mo's Return. Chapter 68, Yi Mo's Return. Yi Mo, you're back. A voice interrupted Yi Mo's concentration. He was stunned, looking at the bloodstain, and didn't notice that Xu Wei had come in. Xu Wei, don't you have to work today? Yi Mo looked strangely at Xu Wei. She was looking tired as she simply shook her head. Yesterday afternoon, Qingxue was injured and was sent to the hospital. Right now she is still in a critical condition. I just went there to see her. How come I didn't see you? Yi Mo was astonished. Ning Qingxue was attacked. How did Xu Wei know that Ning Qingxue was attacked? Wondering about this, he asked, how do you know Ning Qingxue was attacked? You don't know? Xu Wei looked at Yi Mo and asked intriguingly. She thought Yi Mo came back because Ning Qingxue was hurt but didn't expect him not to know anything at all. Yi Mo asked with a strange voice, if she was hurt, how would I know? Are her injuries serious? Although he didn't really have a good impression of Ning Qingxue, she looked really similar to his master, Luo Yin, when she was melancholic, thus, he still cared a bit about her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to Ning Qingxue's request previously. Qingxue had always been living here. You tell me how I wouldn't know. Xu Wei was certain that Yi Mo really didn't know that Ning Qingxue had been injured. Yi Mo frowned. Ning Qingxue had been living here? He had already left, so the act was over. Why would she still be living here? With her family's situation, how could she not have another place to live? Seeing that Yi Mo was lost in his thoughts, Xu Wei spoke once again. After Qingxue had come, she had been living in your room and rarely went out. Every day, she would care for these flowers and sometimes, she would look at them from day to night. Ning Qingxue also liked flowers. Yi Mo looked at the flower pots in bewilderment. He liked flowers because he came here to grow the silver heart grass. Why would Ning Qingxue like to grow flowers? If she really liked it, why didn't he even see her come close to a flower pot for the 20 or so days he had been living with her? On the flower pot, one grass with some bloodstain caught Yi Mo's attention. Although this grass just started to germinate, Yi Mo had already recognized that this was a silver heart grass, and the moment he saw the plant, Yi Mo was immediately excited. The earth here could not only grow the silver heart grass but also make it germinate. Yi Mo immediately thought about why Ning Qingxue would grow this plant here. Was she a cultivator? But Yi Mo quickly realized that this newly germinated silver heart grass was actually from a seed that he had dropped before he collected the seeds. He didn't expect it to germinate. But how did Ning Qingxue know this was silver heart grass and took it so seriously? Yi Mo was still musing when Xu Wei explained. Ning Qingxue seemed to really care about that small blade of grass in that flower pot and even used things to cover it. She looked after it every day, and sometimes she would look at it the whole day and wouldn't get bored. Yesterday, she was still looking at the small grass in the flower pot when two men suddenly charged in from outside. They looked very ferocious. Looking at Yi Mo, who was still quietly listening to her, Xu Wei continued. One man said that Qingxue stole his money and was hiding here growing flowers. That man took a wooden stick and was about to smash the flower from the pot. However, I really don't know what Ning Qingxue was thinking at the time, but she used her body to block that wooden stick, and that stick directly hit her on the back. At that moment, she immediately spewed out a mouthful of blood on the flower pot and fainted. Yi Mo's face turned purple. He didn't know why Ning Qingxue would care so much for that silver heart grass, but he was already furious. Did you find out who those men were? Yi Mo calmed down and asked. Xu Wei shook her head and said, No, but Yi Mo, you need to be careful. After you had left, a lot of people came and asked about you. They even took the surveillance computer away. I don't think those are good people. You need to be careful when you come and go. When Xu Wei spoke till now, Yi Mo was very clear. Those people that tried to take Qingxue away were definitely sent by the Song family to monitor him. Since they hadn't expected Ning Qingxue to move over, they wanted to see if he would come and meet up with her. However, after waiting for some time for him to no avail, they decided to take Ning Qingxue away. Then, the incident of Ning Qingxue being hurt while trying to protect the grass occurred. Yi Mo was sure that the truth shouldn't be far off, but he was already sure that those who had hurt Ning Qingxue were people of the Song family. The only thing he didn't understand was why she would risk her life to save this silver heart grass. The only explanation he could think of was that Ning Qingxue knew that he needed this grass, so she cared for it and would even protect it at all costs. Although this was the easiest explanation he could think of, Yi Mo still believed this didn't make any sense at all because Ning Qingxue had never been so nice to him, so she should be even less for some grass he might need. Yi Mo thought to himself, Song family, since you want to fight, then we'll fight. If I, Yi Mo, fear a mere Song family, then I wouldn't even need to cultivate. I might as well suicide and enter samsara. 1. Regardless of whether Ning Qingxue did it for him or not, since she saved the silver heart grass, this incident was related to Yi Mo, so he should exact her revenge. Xu Wei, I will visit Qingxue in the hospital, but don't tell her that I came here. Yi Mo bid Xu Wei farewell and headed straight for the hospital. Although Xu Wei didn't know why Yi Mo wouldn't let her say anything to Ning Qingxue, she still agreed to his request because she knew that Ning Qingxue didn't have much time left. Just when Yi Mo walked in front of the hospital, he saw a few doctors carrying Ning Qingxue from a portable bed to a car. Yi Mo was stunned and wondered if was she changing hospital. However, his spirit sense scanned Qingshue's situation and immediately found out that her injuries were far more serious than he had imagined. Instantly, a killing intent rose up in Yi Mo's heart. Ning Qingxue was beaten like this in his place, trying to protect the silver heart grass. He was not going to let the perpetrator go. Ning Qingxue was carrying a case in her hands, which was the medical case he had wanted to take away. However, Yi Mo was astonished. Using his spirit sense to scan the case, he found 3 of the beads from the bracelet he had made for Su Jingguan. Why was this in Ning Qingshue's hands? And why were there only 3? He sighed to himself. If Ning Qingxue had these 3 beads on her wrist and not in the case, perhaps she would have been able to avoid the disaster. Yi Mo was just planning to secretly follow behind this ambulance, and just when the car left, he heard 2 nurses talking. This girl should be someone from a big family. Look, even the hospital director is running around. Yeah, I heard that she only has a month to live. This girl doesn't want to accept treatment and wants to go home. Although I can't understand, there didn't seem to be much difference living on the bed unable to move for a month or for a few years. Notes. 1. Samsara is a Sanskrit word that means wandering or world, with the connotation of cyclic, circuitous change. It also refers to the theory of rebirth and cyclicality of all life, matter, existence, a fundamental assumption of all Indian religions. Samsara is sometimes referred to with terms or phrases such as transmigration, karmic cycle, reincarnation, and cycle of aimless drifting, wandering or mundane existence. Source: Wikipedia. Chapter 69, Chi Masterp, 1. Chapter 69, Chi Masterp, 1. Yimo now understood that Ning Qingxue was the one that wanted to go back, which made him wonder why she would choose something like that. However, since Ning Qingxue was going back home, he was no longer in a hurry. When there were no one left during the night, he would sneak inside and help her once again by curing her injuries. As for whether he would take away that piece of silver heartgrass, he still needed to think about it. Since he already knew that the ambulance was going to send Ning Qingxue back, Yimo didn't follow it. Instead, he was wondering where he could find the people who made her on the verge of death. Although he knew it was definitely the Song family, Yimo didn't know where the Song family's current base was in Ninghai. Yimo found a clean restaurant and ate there. After the meal, just when Yimo walked out of the restaurant, he saw 3 people leave a star-rated restaurant, 2 men, and 1 lady, and Yimo quickly recognized one of the men, Wang Peng. However, Yimo didn't care about Wang Peng at all. What interested him was the man beside him. He was around 40 years old, he had a medium build and a long face with a grass patch haircut and slightly bulging temples. Yimo could tell with one glance that this was a master. That man seemed to have sensed Yimo observing him. He actually raised his head and looked toward Yimo, who glanced away with the thought that this man was really powerful. He was sure that this man was even stronger than Wendong, and even if he might not be as strong as Yimo himself, he wasn't far off. This was Yimo's first time encountering such master and immediately understood that it had been that man who cured Wang Peng's hand. Now, his spirit sense could scan up to an 8-meter radius around him, which was perfect for him as he wanted to know what these people were saying. Finally, Yimo stopped at a news agency not far away from where he could perfectly monitor those people without being caught out. I was really lucky to have brother who last time, otherwise, my hand still wouldn't be able to move now. I really feel ashamed to be unable to properly thank you this time for coming to help me. A voice that seemed to be Wang Peng's could be heard. Yimo had now the confirmation that this man really did cure Wang Peng's hand, which meant that this man was a Qi master, and it was his first encounter with a Qi master on Earth. Even Wendong, that he had met the last time, was only strong in brawling and assassination techniques, but she was far from being able to cultivate Qi. The middle-aged man waved his hand and said, "You are too polite, young Master Peng. Your father is also on young Master Tan's side, so this little gesture of help is nothing. However, just try not to go mess with those people selling fake medicine on the streets. There are some quite abled men amongst them." "Yes, I will remember brother whose teachings. I have to trouble brother who to say hello to young Master Tan for my father, as it's a bit inconvenient for me to go over right now. Anyway, thank you, brother who." Wang Peng's tone was very respectful. The middle-aged man waved his hand and entered the Audi. The car was started and left rapidly. Yimo didn't have the time to care about Wang Peng. He focused exclusively on this man that Wang Peng called Brother Hu. This was a master. Immediately, Yimo followed the car. After 20 minutes, the sky had already darkened, and the Audi finally reached a private mansion. Yimo scanned the mansion with his spirit sense and found cameras everywhere, but absolutely no way of getting in. After thinking for a while, Yimo still decided to come back during the night when he would be able to destroy all these cameras and find that brother who more easily. The reason he wanted to find this man was that Yimo had no idea about the martial arts system here and wasn't sure to what state he had to cultivate to ensure his own safety. Even if he had to forcefully interrogate him, he would do so as to not be unprepared when he met a stronger master one day. Unfortunately, this time wasn't the most suitable as the sky was just beginning to turn dark. It was still early now, and he definitely had to help cure Ning Qingshue's wounds. It was just that it wasn't convenient now since there would definitely be someone beside her. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to go, however, when it was later in the night, he would go treat her and then return here. He wanted to go visit Shishio at the Ninghai University, but after some thoughts, he gave up the idea. He was still weak now, and if the Song family somehow find out that he was related to Shishio, they might try to harm him too. Yimo left Brother Hu's mansion and was preparing to go buy some things as he still had some money on him now. After he had finished treating Ning Qingxue, he decided that he would go to Luo Kang and have a look. If possible, he would find a job there, but if things still wouldn't work out, he would go to Kai Wanqing's cousin's company. His idea was to find a place to rent, and once things were more stable, he would get the content of the soil to be analyzed and then plant a few seeds of the silver heart grass. After all, its growth period was very long. During this time, he also intended to go to the Taklamakan desert. He didn't want to wait until the silver heart grass was mature before leaving. That was wasting too much time. On this earth scarce of spirit Kai, he really wouldn't know when he would be able to cultivate to a degree he wanted if he wasted time like that. Although it wasn't foreseeable how strong he would get if he continued like this, there was still hope if he tried, and if he didn't, there would be nothing but regret. Although Ning Qingxue also managed to grow a silver heart grass, she was able to give up her life for that barely germinated blade of grass, and even though Yi Mo didn't know why she would do something like that, he couldn't bear to think about it any further. "Chem, it's really you. I finally found you," a voice broke Yi Mo's contemplation. Yi Mo turned around and found someone that he knew. That person seemed to be called Fang Wei Cheng, and he met him last time when he was practicing his martial arts in the Qingdu Lake Park. At that time, he had wanted to spar with Yi Mo but was defeated in only one move. "Oh, it's you, Fang Wei Cheng," Yi Mo nodded. Fang Wei Cheng was quite straightforward. Fang Wei Cheng saw that Yi Mo still remembered his name and immediately said in happy surprise, "I didn't think you would still remember me. After that day, I had been waiting for you at the Qingdu Lake Park, but I never had been able to see you again. It's really lucky for me to see you here." Yi Mo smiled and said, "You need something from me?" Fang Wei Cheng rubbed his hands nervously. He knew that Yi Mo was quite strong. Even a few of him combined would be no match for Yi Mo. I was wondering if you had time for a chat." Fang Wei Cheng seemed very hopeful. Yi Mo thought that he still had some time now and didn't have a place to waste it on. Since Fang Wei Cheng had something, he might as well go see it. Therefore, Yi Mo nodded and said, "Fine." Seeing that Yi Mo agreed, Fang Wei was elated. He hurriedly brought Yi Mo to a quiet Western restaurant. He didn't even ask if Yi Mo had been here and just ordered a few dishes. Although he hadn't eaten Western cuisine before, Yi Mo felt it was quite good. After eating a few mouthfuls, Yi Mo asked casually, "What's up?" If Fang Wei Cheng was going to ask him to become his master, then Yi Mo would refuse it without a second thought. He didn't have the time to be teaching disciples. Fang Wei Cheng saluted with his fists and said, "I haven't asked for your honorable name yet. I'm called Shi Ying." Yi Mo didn't want to reveal his real name in Ninghai. Besides, calling himself Shi Ying had a few meanings. Firstly, it was that his master, or Shifu, was Luo Ying. Secondly, it was a homonym for Sai Ying, which meant thinking of his master. Hearing Yi Mo's name, Fang Wei Cheng was amazed for a moment but soon recovered. In his opinion, this name was very feminine. However, of course, he wouldn't reveal his thoughts. He had come here today to ask Yi Mo for help. Notes: 1. Reminder: the Kai cultivated in Yi Mo's previous world is the spirit Kai, which is an energy from the surrounding environment and universe. It is a level higher than the Kai which martial arts masters on Earth cultivated. To avoid any confusion, the Kai which mortal martial arts masters cultivate is called Qi instead of Kai. Chapter 70, Arrogance. Chapter 70, Arrogance. Shi Senpai. Fang Wei Cheng couldn't find a proper greeting, so he could only refer to him that way. However, when he just spoke those words, he was interrupted by Yi Mo. "Brother Fang, just say my name, I'm not some senpai." Fang Wei Cheng saw that Yi Mo didn't mind, so he said, "In that case, I won't be too polite. Shi Ying, I came to you asking for help this time. Because I haven't been able to find you before, I know that it is very impolite of me to say this the second time we meet." Yi Mo frowned and thought, "You still know this is impolite? Wasn't this obvious?" He and Fang Wei Cheng were strangers who met for the second time. If a stranger asks for help as soon as he opened his mouth, it would be strange if Yi Mo didn't frown. Seeing Yi Mo's reaction, Fang Wei Cheng didn't dare to drag it on and just said, "You know that I am a driver. Although my boss' son is only going to the university, he is generous, and his relationship with me is excellent. He is doing his 4th year at the Ning High Technology University and is also the president of the Martial Arts Association. However, a month ago, he was heavily injured in a martial arts spar and is still in the hospital now. Yimo stopped Fang Weicheng's words and said, "Do you want me to avenge him?" Fang Weicheng nodded and just wanted to say something but was interrupted by Yimo again. "I won't do such a pointless thing. This thing ends now, don't bring it up again." Fang Weicheng opened his bitter mouth and hesitated before saying, "Brother Ying, let me explain to you first, and if you still aren't interested, I won't dare to ask again." Fang Weicheng changed his reference of Yimo from Shi Ying to Brother Ying in a hurry. Yimo nodded helplessly, "Fine, but be quick, I'm busy tonight. It's because my boss is also from the military that his son loves martial arts. However, a month ago, a few Han men started a taekwondo gym next to the university. In fact, there are a lot of taekwondo clubs in Ning High, which is normal. However, as soon as these Hans started the Han-style taekwondo club, they wrote 2 sentences on their door: every martial arts originated in Han, and among all of them, taekwondo is number 1. Those who enter this club must accept that the Chinese martial arts originated from Han, and only those who admit that could come into the club to study. Originally, everyone thought that no one would join this club simply because of that rule. However, we didn't expect so many people to sign up. I really couldn't get it through my head, and neither could Qi Weidong. So, he went to spar with the people from this Han-style taekwondo club. After saying that, Fang Weicheng sighed. Although he didn't continue speaking, Yimo could guess what happened next. This Qi Weidong was probably the son of Fang Weicheng's boss. In fact, Yimo also didn't really like some of the Hans he had met because they were too shameless. Not only did they call Chinese medicine Han medicine, but they had even said that Zhuge Liang came from Han. This wasn't all. As long as it was a traditional Chinese festival, they would all claim it to be Han. After Fang Weicheng had made another sigh, he said, seeing Qi Weidong willing to challenge the clubmaster, he was actually very welcoming and also made him sign some kind of agreement that they wouldn't be held responsible for any injuries. "I know Qi Weidong's skills. He started practicing martial arts since he was 8, and it has been more than 10 years since, but he still was no match for the vice clubmaster of the club and was heavily beaten. However, due to the prior agreement and the fair nature of the match, there was no way to reproach anything to them. Due to Qi Weidong's injuries, many masters in Ning High went to challenge them, but all of them came back heavily injured. That Han was indeed strong, and it's been a month, yet no one in Ning High was a match for that man. Later on, they even set the challenge at each university to increase their influence. In this way, their Han-style taekwondo club not only didn't close but was instead getting more and more popular, and those signing up increased significantly. I really don't know what these fellow Chinese are thinking." Fang Weicheng seemed furious after he had spoken. Yimo smiled faintly in the meanwhile. He had heard once that the Chinese had tried to reject the Japanese imports for a certain number of years already, but there were still so many people buying Japanese products, still giving them money so they could turn it into bombs and throw it back. Although the current world still waged war, it was only partial war, and those young men and women living in the peaceful era wouldn't be able to think of more deeply about those kinds of things. Their emotions for their country were mostly in their mouths and not in their hearts. They would forget it after speaking. Compared to the older generation that had experienced war, they were missing a lot of things. Usually, when they bought things, they only cared if the brand was famous or if the appearance was good, and as for where it came from, rarely anyone bothered to check. This wasn't to say that they didn't love their country, but more like they didn't have that subtle notion in mind. Of course, Yimo was able to empathize with Fang Weicheng's emotions. He wasn't an angry youth, but someone saying that everything belonged to them made him feel uncomfortable. Yimo was also a Chinese now and knew that they had a long history. He believed that the Han's Taekwondo originated from Chinese martial arts, yet now, they were saying the opposite. Since he was able to help out, Yimo asked, "Brother Fang, what time is it now?" Fang Weicheng looked at his watch and answered, 7:30. Yimo nodded, "I still have 3.5 hours. If you can arrange a match within this time, I should be able to help you with this." Fang Weicheng stood up excitedly, "Brother Ying, I can definitely do that. Right now, they are hoping that someone would fight with them. And now, They would hold the competition with lots of promotions at every university to raise their fame. Afterward, Fang Wei-cheng immediately picked up the phone and started to make a call. Ning High Technology University. A gym that could only contain 3,000 people was filled with more than 4,000 people now, and the lights were on inside because right now, there was a match in progress. One was the president of the Ning High University Martial Arts Association, Li Bangqi, and the other one was the hand-style taekwondo club's vice club master, Pu Dongheng. The reason the vice club master was the challenger was because one had to beat him first before the club master came himself. However, since the establishment of the hand-style taekwondo club a month before, no one had been able to beat Pu Dongheng in a match. Many challengers either broke their arms or legs. Even though Li Bangqi was only the president of one martial arts association in Ning High University, he had represented Ning High in participating in the National Youth Martial Arts Competition and won the third prize. So this time, the match between the two of them almost attracted the attention of all the university students of Ning High. However, this gymnasium was too small and couldn't hold more people. Most people stood outside watching on a big screen that was prepared for the event. The match between Li Bangqi and Pu Dongheng didn't involve rounds, but just free fighting. Except for the prohibition of weapons, they could use any means they wanted. Almost everyone was cheering for Li Bangqi. Although the two were in a heated battle, no one had the advantage yet, but everyone knew that the deciding moment was about to come. Because every time Pu Dongheng fought with someone, he would suddenly defeat his opponent around 20 minutes and now, it was almost 20 minutes. Li Bangqi originally thought that even though a mere Han had beaten many masters in Ning High, he was still a Han, so Li Bangqi didn't take him seriously. However, after they had started fighting, he realized that Pu Dongheng was not only agile but also experienced in Chinese martial arts. The most despicable part was that these Hans claimed it as theirs. The more Li Bangqi fought, the more he became alerted. He had already taken a few punches from Pu Dongheng, and even though he had a strong body and it didn't really matter much for the moment, he was the only one to know that he only landed one kick on Pu Dongheng, causing barely any damage to him. Chapter 71. What is truly crazy? Chapter 71. What is truly crazy? The reason Li Bangqi was so shocked was because his master had once told him that the highest power level in martial arts was the heaven state. Although he had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years, he didn't even reach the lowest level, the yellow state. At most, he was on the borderline of high-level martial arts. However, those who reached the legendary heaven state were very rare. Perhaps no one had even seen one. Even his master was barely in the doorsteps of the yellow state but unable to progress any further. Real martial arts masters came from ancient martial arts families and some hidden power factions. However, these ancient martial arts families usually never showed themselves to the world and only pursued martial arts to its extremity so normal people could rarely see them. If one day, someone could block his Hurricane Storm Fist, then it meant that this person was on the borderline of the yellow state, and he definitely wouldn't be a match for him. However, right now, Li Bangqi's Hurricane Storm Fist had been completed, yet his opponent was still standing firmly. Li Bangqi immediately remembered his master's words. He knew things weren't good and was about to go into a defensive stance. But at this moment, Pu Dongheng seemed to have suddenly turned into two people, and taking advantage of that one moment when Li Bangqi was hesitating, Pu Dongheng had landed a kick on Li Bangqi's chest. The pain of breaking ribs made Li Bangqi forget for a second the fact that he had been kicked out of the ring. However, he immediately recovered his mind as he had realized that he had lost and was beaten by the vice club master. The club master didn't even need to show his face. At this moment, he no longer cared about the pain of his broken ribs, and the only thing in his mind was the humiliation he received. The Hans stole the arts of his ancestors and used it to beat him. The boisterous gymnasium suddenly went into a deadly silence. Li Bangqi represented the highest level of martial arts in Ning High, but he couldn't even beat a vice club master. How embarrassed were the few thousand people at the scene. The reason Li Bangqi made his move today was because he had just come back from Beijing the day before, and yet he hadn't expected to suffer a loss as soon as he arrived. The vice president of the Ning High Martial Arts Association, who was also the chairman of the Ning High Technology University Student Association, Chen Weilin, said with a face full of disappointment, quickly take Bungchi to the hospital, we surrender this match. There was sighing everywhere in the gymnasium, and many people started to leave in disappointment. Suddenly, Chen Weilin's phone rang and, as he picked up the call, he had only heard one sentence before exclaiming, "What, you found him? Okay, leave this to me. Club Master PU, we still have one more member of our martial arts association who wants to challenge you today. This is the last challenge, and if we still can't beat you this time, I will represent the Ninghai Martial Arts Association not to challenge you ever again." Chen Weilin's words immediately caught everyone's attention. Not challenging them again meant accepting their status, and everyone thought that Chen Weilin was mad. Ha 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 ha, you're welcome to send more contestants. Our Han martial arts masters aren't afraid of challenges, on the contrary, we worry that there are no more challenges, and I was starting to wonder why there was only one every few days. Pu Dongheng laughed carkily. He wanted more challenges since the more there were, the more famous his Han-style taekwondo club would become. What? There's still someone challenging him? Stay to support him. We must beat these Hans until they know what true Chinese martial arts is. Yes, we must stay to support our people. If you want to stay, you can stay. I'm sick of the disappointment, I'm leaving. Yeah, leave. Why stay and cheer for the Hans? With the heated discussions, half of the people left, and the tightly squeezed place was quickly becoming more spacious. However, some of those who were watching the match outside heard that there was another challenger incoming and decided to stay. Soon, new people squeezed into the gymnasium, and the place that was just becoming empty became full again. What sort of person is it? Does he want to challenge the Han? But even if he loses, I will still support him, at least he isn't a coward. Yes, of course, we support him. Unlike some people, they lose their vigor after seeing a loss, so no wonder the Hans are so cocky. I heard it was because Chen Weilin received a last-minute call and arranged the match. However, the Hans definitely want more people to challenge them. This way, they would become more famous. Famous? I don't think so. The challenge hasn't started yet. How would the Hans know they would win? When Yi Mo came to the Ninghai Technology University, he didn't think that there would be so many people at the scene. It could even be described as a sea of people. Despite that Yi Mo was a cultivator who was originally from another world and preferred peace, he still resonated under the fervor of these hot-blooded students and Ninghai citizens. What he didn't know was that this was only the scene after half of the people had already left. Yi Mo followed Fang Wei Chen into the passage and entered from the back. No one came up and said anything because he looked too ordinary, so ordinary that he didn't look any different from an ordinary, quiet student. Brother Fang, did you find that master? Did he come? Where is he? Chen Weilin saw Fang Wei Cheng and immediately asked a few questions. That's him, Shi Ying. A master of the martial arts realm, Fang Wei Cheng pointed at Yi Mo and said, "Her." Chen Weilin was so surprised that he was startled. How could it be such a quiet-looking youth? However, he immediately reacted and saw that his actions were very impolite. He hurriedly extended his hand and said, "Master Shi, hello, I'm Chen Weilin, the vice president of the Ninghai Martial Arts Association. It's a pleasure to meet you, but that Pu Dongheng is rather strong. How about I show you some of his recorded matches first?" Yi Mo waved his hand and said, "I'm tight on time, there's no need for recordings, the faster, the better." Chen Weilin opened his mouth and thought, wow, he is really arrogant, too arrogant. Everyone who fought Pu Dongheng all analyzed his fights repeatedly. Even so, no one had been able to hold out for more than 20 minutes against him. Who is this Shi Ying? Did Wei Cheng get things wrong? What if he just went up and got thrown down in one round? It was a small thing if he got hurt, but then the face of the Ninghai Martial Arts Association would be completely lost. Thinking about this, Chen Weilin looked at Fang Wei Cheng and wanted to know what Fang Wei Cheng would say. Seeing Chen Weilin look at him, Fang Wei Cheng waved his hand and said, "President Chen, just do as what Shi Ying requires. His time is really tight. It would be best if we could call the club master and the vice one here to fight him as well. I believe after this match, the Han-style Taekwondo club would go back to where it came from." Fang Wei-cheng was quite admiring of Yi Mo's strength, as he didn't believe the clubmaster could kick him out in less than one round like this Shi Ying had done so easily in the past. Seeing that Fang Wei-cheng said this, Chen Weilin couldn't say anything anymore and just looked at Yi Mo before turning around to make the arrangements. Wait. Yi Mo stopped Chen Weilin. Is there anything else? I will do as you wish. Chen Weilin had not much faith in Yi Mo, but after all, he was brought by Fang Wei-cheng, so he would comply. Go tell them that if they want to fight me, they better get everyone from their club and fight me together. I don't want to waste time. And, tell me where that Pu Dongheng likes to break people's bones, Yi Mo said to Chen Weilin. What? Chen Weilin was truly dumbfounded now. Before he had thought that Shi Ying was very arrogant for not watching the recordings, but now, he knew that he was truly crazy. Chapter 72, Descent of the Crow's Butt. Chapter 72, Descent of the Crow's Butt. What? Although Pu Dongheng could speak fluent Chinese, he was so angry that his accent changed after hearing Chen Weilin's request. He had been challenged for a month, and no one in Ninghai was a match for him, but now, someone wanted to challenge everyone in their club at the same time. Pu Dongheng's face turned purple as he said, okay, but he must beat me first. Perhaps after he had fought me, he wouldn't say such things. I'm sorry, President Chen, I want to ask you to tell him that there will be injuries in the fight, don't regret after he goes in the hospital. Although our club welcomes challengers, not every little prawn can come and challenge us. Now, if he still wants to fight, then hurry up. After speaking, he sat down and meditated, ignoring Chen Weilin. What? The challenger tonight wants to challenge the entire club. Is this real? What a boss, who is this? Even if he loses, I will still support him. The people at the scene erupted upon hearing this news that had spread like wildfire across the scene, as it had immediately excited those supporters with only one thin line of hope. Although they knew this was impossible, it still ignited their fervor. There was no stopping it. Yi Mo didn't have to wait long until Chen Weilin came back with someone following behind him. That person had an agreement in his hand and made Yi Mo sign and press his fingerprint on it. After that person had left, Chen Weilin said, "That Han said that you would earn the right to talk about fighting his entire club only after beating him. Right now, he is waiting for you on the stage." The boisterous scene immediately quietened down after Yi Mo came in. Originally, they thought that a challenger who could be so cocky was at least very tall and big if not bulky. However, the quiet-looking Yi Mo was obviously a student. Many people could no longer allow their eyes to be tortured and left quietly, thinking that even if they were no match for them, they couldn't use such low ways of pestering them. At least Li Bangqi was nearly 1.9 tall, but this Shi Ying was not only not bulky but also didn't look like a martial arts master no matter what. Pu Dongheng was also stunned. He really had some expectations for this arrogant Shi Ying, but he had never thought that he would be so young. It could be said that out of all the people that had challenged him this month, this Shi Ying was the most ordinary. "You are the one who arrogantly challenged our entire club?" Pu Dongheng pointed at Yi Mo and really couldn't get his head across. However, Yi Mo didn't answer and just said coldly, "If you want to fight, hurry up, I still have other business, I don't have time to play with you Martians." He could easily tell how strong Pu Dongheng was, slightly stronger than Wen Dong, but if she was fighting with her life on the line, he might not even be a match for her. Compared to that brother who he was going to see that night, Pu Dongheng was a far cry. How could someone like this be called a master? Martian? Pu Dongheng repeated and soon realized that Yi Mo was ridiculing him for being ignorant, so he replied, "Soon I will let you know what regret is." Then, Pu Dongheng immediately went for a combo kick. Pu Dongheng believed that if he used this combo kick, Yi Mo definitely wouldn't be able to dodge it. He was going to kick Yi Mo up as soon as possible, and when he fell down, he would launch a round of attack. The cheering at the gymnasium immediately stopped. Most of the people at the scene had seen Pu Dongheng's matches. This was the first time he had used his combo kick as soon as the match started. The less brave girls didn't even dare to look at Yi Mo anymore and just closed their eyes instead. Yi Mo sneered. From the way Pu Dongheng moved, he could tell that he wouldn't be able to improve in his life at all. His movements were too reserved, and although Yi Mo didn't cultivate Chinese martial arts, He knew that someone who tried to kill his opponent on the first attack wouldn't be someone strong unless he was actually countless times stronger than his opponent. And this Pu Dongheng wanted to beat him senseless with one move? He thought too high of himself. Yi Mo didn't even move and just stared coldly at Pu Dongheng's combo kick. Oh no. Everyone who looked at Yi Mo sighed. He didn't even know how to dodge. This was too stupid. Chen Weilin must have gone mad from the losses and found someone like this to get beat up. Pu Dongheng's idea was good, and it seemed insurmountable to him. Perhaps this idea wasn't bad for those opponents he had faced before. Even if he couldn't succeed with this one, he still had other moves, and this wouldn't affect him at all. Unfortunately, he met Yi Mo. Yi Mo's first move was to reach out his hand and grab his ankle. The second move was to swing him up and then followed with 2 kicks on each of the kneecaps on Pu Dongheng's legs. Pu Dongheng didn't even get to scream when Yi Mo's third move, a few quick kicks, landed on his chest. The fourth move was the final kick that landed right on his nose. The last sentence that Pu Dongheng, who was shouting in excruciating pain, heard was "I'll give you the descent of the crows but move." After hearing this sentence, he felt that he was sitting inside a round barrel with countless garbage covering his face. After Yi Mo had walked off for a few seconds, the scene suddenly erupted into thunderous roars. He actually kicked a Han, who was so arrogant for a month, flying so easily. How dare you act cocky in China? Taekwondo? It was only something that our ancestors in the Tang dynasty passed into the Han lands. Now, how dare you proclaim that to be your own? Now, you encounter the attacks of our ancestors, and your butt has to turn around. The gymnasium was rumbling. There were countless calls going out or coming in. Quickly come, it's true, he really was beaten, and in one move, it was so fascinating. There should be more, later on, come quickly. But there are no longer seats here anymore. Ahahaha, your fault for leaving. God, luckily I didn't listen to you. That was really a show. One move. What? How to describe that move? Just pretend it was Bruce Lee. Yeah, go regret, no time to talk to you. I need to go see my idol. No, I can't deal with it. I love Shiying, I want to marry him. Stop drooling, just look at you. Sigh, it's a bit hard. Miao Yuan, do you want to die? What? He actually won? And in one move? What the hell, why is my luck so bad? I've been watching it for a month, but I didn't get to see this. No, I must get there, it's too exhilarating. A young man who was eating fast food immediately hung up and quickly went out. Hey, you still haven't paid for your food yet. When the boss rushed out, there was no one left. Chapter 73, Famous. Chapter 73, Famous. That Shiying kind of looks like someone from my school, how is this possible? Immediately, a Ninghai University student realized that Shiying had similarities with Yi Mo but obviously didn't dare to believe that thought. Who didn't know who Yi Mo was in Ninghai University? How could he become Shiying? Phut, keep dreaming, your school? The strongest in your school, Li Bangqi, has already lost. The student who spoke before felt so as well. After all, there were too many similar-looking people, so he didn't say anything anymore. Master Shi, I didn't think you would be so strong. It was really right to invite you this time. It's almost like a dream. Chen Weilin was so excited that he didn't know what to say anymore. He didn't think that this Shiying would be much stronger than what Fang Weicheng had proclaimed. That cocky Pu Dongheng was absolutely out of his league. Although Fang Weicheng was sure that Yi Mo would be eventually the victor, he didn't think he would win so cleanly. A tall girl ran in, and looking at Yi Mo, hopefulness glimmered across her eyes, but she still remained calm and said to Chen Weilin, "President, some journalists want to interview Brother Shiying." Of course, Chen Weilin also wanted journalists to interview him. For him, the more known this event was, the better, but he still needed to ask for Yi Mo's permission. Yi Mo heard the girl's words but waved his hand and said, "There's no need for an interview, hurry up and arrange for that clubmaster to fight me. I don't have much time." Okay, of course, your things are the top priority, I will arrange for it immediately. Yu Yaxin, push the journalists away. Just say that Master Shiying needs to rest. After finishing, Chen Weilin rushed out, but his footsteps were much lighter than before. Seeing that Chen Weilin went out, Yu Yaxin suddenly took out a small notebook and pen, walking fearfully toward Yi Mo, she asking in a small voice, "Brother She, could you give me an autograph?" Yi Mo smiled and said, "Of course." Then, he took over the notebook, but as soon as he had written one character, he felt that something was wrong. He was used to writing Yi Mo and actually wrote the first character to be Yi. However, he just hesitated for a moment before finally writing down Shi Ying. Yu Yaxin took the book with a blushed face saying thank you before rushing out. She still needed to tell the journalists that they couldn't do interviews, but her heart was still beating rapidly. Thinking about the admiration she would receive from her schoolmates in her dorm, she couldn't resist revealing a smile at the edge of her mouth. Why won't Mr. She be interviewed? The female journalist was very shocked upon hearing that Yi Mo rejected interviews. Although she was only one media body of Ninghai, who didn't want to be famous now? There was a chance to be famous, but he didn't take it. Yu Yaxin saw the journalist was a bit unhappy and hurriedly said, "Master She might have another match, how about you ask President Chen later?" "I can't make this decision." "Fine, I will go talk to your vice president, and if that still doesn't work, I will go straight to the president of the Ninghai Martial Arts Association." This female journalist spoke angrily. She was very unhappy with the condescending attitude that the Ninghai Technology University was adopting. Just when Yi Mo was getting impatient while waiting for his next opponent, Chen Weilin hurried in with a face full of excitement. How did it go? Fang Wei Cheng had been staying with Yi Mo. He knew that Yi Mo's time was short, so he asked Chen Weilin as soon as he came in. The hands surrendered. The hand-style taekwondo club will leave tomorrow and won't use that title ever again, Chen Weilin said excitedly with a face full of pride and satisfaction. It was as though he had defeated Pu Dongheng himself. Fang Wei Cheng frowned and said, "How could the hands surrender? Their club master is really strong, I've seen him before. He is definitely much stronger than that Pu Dongheng. This shouldn't be." However, Chen Weilin replied, "Yes, they said it very clearly and even signed." That club master checked Pu Dongheng's wound and looked at the recording. Then, he immediately surrendered. However, he said that it was only temporary. He would fight Master She at the same place a year later. Yi Mo frowned. He didn't have time to fight them again a year later, but since they surrendered now, he couldn't fight them again today anyway. Seeing Yi Mo frown, Chen Weilin immediately said, "I didn't agree with him, but he said that I didn't need to, he would come here a year later, and if Master Shi Ying didn't come to fight him, he wouldn't blame you. He just said that if you didn't come, then it would be obvious who would win. They lost and yet they are still so cocky. These hands are really shameless." Fang Wei Cheng was angry. Yi Mo waved his hand and said, "We can talk about these things a year later. I'm leaving now." He stood up and headed for the door. Seeing that Yi Mo was about to leave, Chen Weilin hurriedly said, "Master Shi Ying, today is a joyful day. How about I invite you to a dinner with us at the Ru Wei Tower? Also, a few journalists are waiting outside for you." Yi Mo smiled and said, "There's no need for that, I still have things to do anyway. I'll just leave using the window so there won't be any trouble with the journalists outside." He didn't even wait for their response, he opened the window and jumped out. Wait. This is the 3rd floor. However, Chen Weilin had barely enough time to finish his sentence before Yi Mo had already disappeared from the window. Chen Weilin and Fang Wei Cheng rushed to the window and yet, Yi Mo was nowhere to be seen. Although Yi Mo had left, this scene was actually more chaotic. People were celebrating, drinking champagne and beer everywhere, and the room was filled with happy shouts, simply because the hands, who had been winning consecutively for a month, had admitted defeat. They could take what was yours in front of you, but making them admit defeat was extremely hard. At this time, Shi Ying's name had spread throughout the entire university and was spreading outside even quicker. Many people were starting to know that a great master called Shi Ying had appeared in Ninghai. The happiest people tonight were those who got to see with their own eyes the match between Yi Mo and Pu Dongheng, but the unhappiest were those journalists who waited for him for a long time and still didn't manage to see him. And then, there was the last group of people, the morose one. They were the ones who left at the last minute. Now, no words could describe their feeling. Regret was too light of a word to describe their feeling. It was as though a hardcore Chinese soccer fan was watching the World Cup between China versus Spain in the finals, and after 90 minutes, the score was 0-4 with China losing. Although the referee had called for 3 more minutes of overtime, because of the disappointment, a lot of soccer fans had left the stadium. Yet 3 minutes later, they learned outside of the stadium that China had scored 5 goals in 3 minutes and eventually pulled down Spain from the throne with a score of 5-4. But the last 3 minutes, they weren't there to see it. How depressing would that be? The time was already around 11 p.m., so Yimo quickly left the Ning High Technology University. What he wanted to do first was to treat Ning Qingxue, and at this time, the person staying with her should be already asleep. Chapter 74, Ning Qingxue's Last Words. Chapter 74, Ning Qingxue's Last Words. When Yimo came to the house, he found a 30-or-so-year-old woman still sitting in front of Ning Qingxue's bed, and looking quite similar to her. It was probably Ning Qingxue's mother. However, she looked really young, and if Ning Qingxue's incident didn't occur, she would perhaps look even younger. With Ning Qingxue's mother here, Yimo didn't know whether or not he should go in now. Just when Yimo was hesitating, the woman beside the bed spoke. "Qingxue, you should let go of that case and sleep." "Mom, you can go to sleep, I want to have some quiet time to myself." Although her voice was really soft, Yimo could still hear it with his spirit sense. The woman near the bed sighed and spoke after a while. "The nurse and I will be outside. If there's anything that you need, just ring the bell. If you're in pain, tell Mom, and I'll get the nurse to come in and give you some anesthetics." Yimo looked at this woman as she walked out of the room and waited until she was outside to rub her eyes. This place had been transformed into a temporary medical place, and 2 young nurses were sleeping on the beds on the side. Yimo waited for a while, and when that woman sat on the bed, he went over quietly and pressed the chakra point of the 3 women inside the room to force them to sleep. He didn't want someone to suddenly charge in while he was treating Ning Qingxue. After doing all that, Yimo entered Ning Qingxue's room. He used to live in this room before and gave it to Ning Qingxue after she had come. As he entered, Yimo felt things were familiar yet unknown at the same time. He looked at Ning Qingxue, who was hugging the case, and knew that her injuries were very serious, even more than he had expected. He just couldn't understand why she constantly hugged his case. Yimo was still thinking whether he should tell Ning Qingxue that he was treating her, or make her sleep and then treat her when he heard Ning Qingxue's quiet murmuring. Then, he saw the red phone on her hands, and he immediately realized that she was recording a message on it. "Yimo, I'm sorry, I will leave soon. I know that I hurt you, and I regret it so much. I really wanted to see you once before I passed away to apologize. After experiencing all that, I finally know how naive I was. I am. However, I finally realized how magnanimous you are, but it is already too late. Besides, the only thing I do not regret is blocking that grass. I only regret the way I treated you. After reading your letter, I understood how lonely you were. You never had friends, and yet I was still a nasty woman, hurting you again and again. I even used the money you earned from selling your blood to buy a few $1,000 bottle of wine, but I never thought about how you would feel. I just did what I wanted without thinking of the consequences, and when I finally understood things, it was already too late." Ning Qingxue coughed a few times as her face was getting paler, but she still moved her phone closer and continued. "Yimo, I don't know if I love you, but if I still had the chance to be engaged with you, I definitely wouldn't do it because I needed you as a shield, but because I am willing to marry you. Perhaps it has nothing to do with love, and you might even say I'm not good enough for you, but I still keep the marriage certificate by my side. I never divorced, and won't divorce in the future. You are my only husband in this lifetime. Regardless if you know it or not, regardless if you agree or not, I, Ning Qingxue, am willing to be your wife and am your wife. Yimo, I still have to apologize to you. I was your wife, but I never took on the responsibilities of a wife for a single day. Instead, I got you into so much more trouble. I was like an immature child, thinking that I knew everything." She paused for some time. "Yimo, I will protect you from heaven. You need to stay well. It's a pity that I wasn't even able to leave a child for you. You must find a girl who loves you, not someone like me. Speaking till now, Ning Qingxue gasped for some air and caressed the case with her hands before saying once again, Yimo, I've never said the two words Larogong, in my life. I really want to say it, but I'm too embarrassed. There's a blade of grass in the yard. I took care of it every day because I've seen you do the same with the previous one. I don't know if it could be useful to you. If it is, then take it away when it matures. Perhaps that is the only thing I can leave to you. Yimo. Larogong, are you still well? Ning Qingshue's voice gradually got lower. Yimo suddenly felt sour and guilty in his heart. When he had helped Ning Qingxue before, he wasn't as magnanimous as Ning Qingxue thought him to be. He just thought that Ning Qingshue's gloomy face looked like his master Luo Ying, so he was willing to help her. He wanted his master to also have people helping her if she ever was in trouble. And the money from selling blood, he didn't go for her. Even if he had had more money than he could have spent, he would have still gone there. Wasting was bad, but Ning Qingxue thought that he was trying to make a living for her and still felt guilty about it. It could be seen that Ning Qingxue was a kind-hearted girl. It was just that the environment she lived in, and her family background gave her a sense of aloofness that made her have a distaste toward strangers. However, if you peeled away the layer of her shield, she was a kind-hearted, yet pitiful person. However, she mixed up the feeling of love and guilt. Perhaps she would understand one day. Yimo sighed. This had further reinforced his decision of saving Ning Qingxue. However, he wouldn't tell her for now. After all, his abilities were too absurd, it would only scare her. Just when Yimo thought that Ning Qingxue was asleep and prepared to seal a few meridians on her to treat her, Ning Qingxue suddenly grabbed the phone and mumbled, Dad, Mom, I'm leaving. I've been a bad daughter, I already married to Yimo, that case is his marriage gift to me, don't separate that case from me. There's a grass in the yard that I left for him, if he ever came back, give this phone to him, but if he never does, she paused for a long time, then never mind. Sorry, I caused so much trouble for the family and just left. Ning Qingshue's voice suddenly dropped low. Just when Yimo was wondering if he should tell her that he was already here, Ning Qingxue suddenly grabbed a knife from the case and pierced it toward her throat. Yimo was shocked and couldn't care anymore as he dashed in front of Ning Qingxue. There was too much distance, and he didn't have time to grab the knife. He could only block with his arm in front of her throat. The knife pierced Yimo's hand and was blocked by Yimo's kai, rendering it unable to go any farther. However, Ning Qingxue fainted because she had used too much strength. Yimo pulled out the knife. Although it didn't pierce very deeply, there was still some blood. Yimo stopped his wound from bleeding, and seeing that Ning Qingxue had fainted, he raised his hand and sealed a few meridians, rendering her unable to wake up for some time. Afterward, he tried to take the case from her arms, however, he discovered that Ning Qingxue clutched the case tightly. Even when she had fainted, her hand still held the case firmly. Unless Yimo forced it out of her, he wouldn't be able to take it from her at all. Yimo helplessly shook his head and could only open the case in her hands. There were quite a few things inside. Yimo took out a bottle of pills and took out that packet of silver needles. He stuffed 2 heart protection pills into Ning Qingshue's mouth and, using his kai, he helped her body digest it. Afterward, he took up the 108 silver needles, sterilizing them with his kai, and flipped Ning Qingxue as he took off her top. Note: 1. Laro Gong is how the wives call their husbands. Chapter 75. Treatment. Chapter 75. Treatment. With Ning Qingxue being such a beautiful girl, although Yimo had never seen her back, he could still imagine how white it would be. However, when he finally saw her back, it was almost fully dark purple, showing how hard she had been hit that day. Seeing the wound on Ning Qingshue's back, Yimo's killing intent rose once again. Song family, I won't let this go. Yimo unbuckled Ning Qingshue's bras, and the 108 silver needles in his hands quickly fell onto Ning Qingshue's back. At the same time, his 2 hands kept massaging Ning Qingshue's body. As his cultivated kai gradually permeated into Ning Qingshue's body through his hand, her broken meridians, organs, and backbone began to slowly recover. Luckily, Yimo had left some medical pills here, otherwise, it would be very hard to heal her in only one night with her wounds. As Ning Qingshue's tattered body was gradually recovering by Yimo's kai, Yimo's face was becoming paler. Initially, he had thought that he would have been able to treat Ning Qingshua's injuries in at most a little over an hour. But now, it had already been 2 hours, and he only finished half. Pea-sized sweat dripped on Ning Qingshua's back, but Yimo didn't dare to stop because if he did, not only his previous work would have been for nothing, but it would be even harder for him to help her later on. If only he had a spirit stone or a spiritual recovery pill, even of the lowest grade. Yimo felt that his Kai was gradually running out and was dreaming about having such a pill. After another hour, Yimo's hands that had been massaging Ning Qingshua's back were beginning to shake. Although he felt that the Kai in his body was not enough to continue, he still had to hold on. Despite knowing that he may lose his powers like this, he had no choice. He overestimated his powers and underestimated Ning Qingshua's injuries. Although Yimo's face gradually turned bad, Ning Qingshua's skin was continuously returning to a healthy white. The dark purple on her back also seemed to have been removed, layer by layer. Her face was gradually becoming ruddy and the tense, wrinkled skin due to pain started to relax. Although her meridians were sealed shut by Yimo, which still prevented her from waking up, he saw from her eyebrows that she had felt something. Yimo bit the tip of his tongue and forced the last sliver of his spiritual Kai into her body. He continued to massage her, and after another half an hour, Yimo finally finished recovering the last bit of injury on Ning Qingxue. However, he could no longer resist and just collapsed on her back. As Yimo's face touched the soft skin on Ning Qingshua's back, a faint aroma reached his nostrils, shocking him as the scent immediately reminded him about Luo Ying. He got up quickly and helped Ning Qingxue to tie up her bras and put on clothes before flipping her back around. Poor Yimo, he had never touched something like a bra, and a small tie kept him troubled for a long time. He was almost sweating before he had managed to tie it back up. At this moment, Yimo just realized that Ning Qingshua's front chest stood firm and massive, and 2 round white rabbits seemed to squeeze out, which made Yimo feel astounded. With her perfect face, it made Yimo almost unable to resist. However, Yimo was drained and simply rested for a bit before unsealing Ning Qingshua's meridians and just left her to sleep. Before leaving, Yimo packed up the things in the little case and looked at Ning Qingshua's hands that tightly held the case. He sighed and eventually didn't take the case away. He didn't even take anything inside it as well. When Yimo walked out of the house, it was almost 3 a.m. He found a quiet place and rested for an hour. At approximately 4, Yimo had basically recovered 70% of his strength. However, due to him treating Ning Qingxue before, his spirit Kai was a bit unstable. However, Yimo felt this was enough and thus headed toward that brother whose mansion. When Yimo came, the guards outside the mansion were snoring on a table. Yimo casually knocked them out to prevent them from waking up too quickly and went into the room, shutting down every monitoring computer. He knew that these computers should be connected to the other computers in the compound, but since he had shut down the one with the recordings, they wouldn't be able to monitor anymore for the time being. He just didn't know if there were other monitoring computers. What made Yimo curious was that when he went inside the mansion, there was another room with its lights on. Yimo walked in a bit and scanned with his spirit sense. As expected, there were still a few people inside discussing something that still weren't sleeping. That brother who was there, but other than him, there was also a 20-or-so-year-old youth with a face that actually looked a bit similar to Song Shoan. 2 bulky men were standing at the door. Yimo went over quietly, and with just 2 palms, these 2 bulky men silently collapsed. Brother Hu, that Wang Peng did things well today, with these 2 little girls staying over tonight with him. Chen Shiping shouldn't keep finding excuses anymore. I don't believe that Yimo could still run with Chen Shiping helping us. Although this youth's voice wasn't loud, it was full of confidence. That brother Hu nodded and said, "You're right, young Master Tan, although Chen Shiping is only SOSO, the power behind him is sometimes more useful than a government-wanted list. I'm just worried that those few old people under his father would disapprove." Disapprove? Chen Shiping is Chen Longto's only son. Even if he wanted the moon in the skies, he would pick it for him. With his power, he would have 10 times more ways of finding Yimo than I have. Although the Song family is one of the 5 great families, there are still some things that we can't do overtly. It would be best if we hand it to Chen Longtu. This young Master Tan seemed to take Qian Longtu very seriously but was obviously contemptuous towards Qian Shiping. After stopping, he said, Tian Ji is getting worse. He actually got 2 idiots to take away Ning Qingxue. Not only did they not get the person here, but they got themselves into trouble. Otherwise, if Ning Qingxue had been here, she would have been so much better than those 2 girls. I also want to enjoy the taste of the prettiest girl in Beijing. What a failure of a person. He even sneered after talking. I will take care of Tianji and his 2 underlings. They are still regretting in the basement. But looking at Ning Qingxue, she seemed to have some feelings for Yi Mo, that disabled person. Perhaps we can use this to block Yi Mo in Ninghai, Brother Hu said. Young Master Tan shook his head. You are underestimating Yi Mo. According to my recent investigation, I found this guy was the typical person who acts like a pig to eat the tiger. Not only is he very strong, but he is also very cunning. If it wasn't for this, it wouldn't be necessary for us to go to someone like Qian Longtu. After all, if this spreads, it won't do good for the Song family. Yi Mo had finally understood the whole situation. This young Master Tan should be from the Song family and was here just for him, and they accidentally injured Ning Qingxue instead of abducting her. Yi Mo scanned out his spirit sense and indeed found 3 men on their knees in the basement. In the room not far away, he saw 2 other girls with their hair covering their faces, laying on the bed completely nude, and beside them was a young man. However, these 2 girls were full of bruises, and it was unknown if they were asleep or unconscious, but by the looks of it, these 2 girls were the 2 girls young Master Tan was talking about. Yi Mo suddenly discovered that one of the girls seemed a bit familiar, and soon he recognized this girl from Ninghai University and was even considered as one of the top 10 prettiest girls there. It's getting late, Brother Hu, we should get some rest now. After saying that, young Master Tan stood up. Before Brother Hu could respond, the door was kicked open. At the same time, a cold voice said, There's no need to rest, from today onward, there will be plenty of time for you to rest. Chapter 76, Master. Chapter 76, Master Oh? It's you. Yi Mo. The man called Brother Hu immediately recognized Yi Mo since he had seen his photo countless times. He didn't even bother to think before turning around and throwing a punch. The wind force of the punch was mainly focused in the direction of Yi Mo. Yi Mo knew that this Brother Hu was just as he had thought, a master, and he wanted to test how strong his power was, so he only threw a punch in response. Crack, the sound of bones breaking resounded in the room. Yi Mo took 2 steps back and reached the door. Meanwhile, Brother Hu fell 2 steps back too and rammed onto the young Master Tan. With the clash of the fists, both of their fists had bones fractured. Yi Mo's eyes grew cold as he realized that his power actually didn't mean much in this place. Although he had only recovered 70% of his power, there definitely was plenty of people much stronger than him. Yellow level tertiary stage, Brother Hu's eyes were filled with shock as he spat out the 4 words. However, since the bones of his hand had broke, he didn't dare to keep fighting with Yi Mo. He didn't have the ability to recover bones like Yi Mo and, although he was able to cultivate inner qi, broken bone injuries required about a month to heal for him. Seeing that Yi Mo and Brother Hu were even, young Master Tan showed a sliver of worry in his eyes as he didn't expect Yi Mo to be this strong. Actually, he had never seen anyone more powerful than Brother Hu, and he had even heard that Brother Hu was a disciple of the ancient martial arts. Since Yi Mo was able to block one of Brother Hu's fist, there was no way that he wouldn't be shocked over this. Although he didn't know what yellow level tertiary stage meant, Yi Mo thought it was probably how the levels of martial arts were called here. Young Master Tan saw Yi Mo's power and was about to take his phone out to make a call, but since Yi Mo already knew that he was from the Song family and came here to capture him, he didn't have any thought of being lenient and threw out a metal nail casually. Before he even finished dialing the number on this phone, the metal nail had struck young Master Tan in the forehead. You actually killed young Master Tan, Brother Hu had shock and anger in his expression. Yi Mo smiled faintly. I also killed Song Shoan. What? Do you have a problem with that? Brother Hu's eyes immediately went back to normal as he thought, yeah, he had even killed Song Shoan so he would have no more pressure in eliminating Song Xiaotan. If you can answer a few questions for me, perhaps I can let you go today. Yimo stared coldly at this brother who. Haha, let me, Hu Qiu, go? You didn't even have the upper hand before. Since you came today, don't leave. Hu Qiu's healthy hand took out a whip from somewhere and immediately jumped up. The whip in his hand turned into a flurry of images and rushed towards Yimo. It was so fast that, looking at the countless whip's images, Yimo didn't dare to go in. If it had been before he had treated Ning Qingxue, he would be able to take on the whip forcefully. But now, although he had recovered 70% of his strength, his Kai was still a bit unstable. Yimo understood his situation right now and immediately dodged. However, the room was too small, and his back was whipped. A burning sensation came, and Yimo knew that he had shed at least a layer of skin with that blow. It definitely brought out a gash that wasn't shallow. Seeing that his whip attack had succeeded, Hu Qiu pressed on. He almost turned his body immediately as the hand swirled towards Yimo again. Yimo had to admit that this brother whose whip technique was really good. He was forced to recognize that he could only dodge in this small room, which would put him in a disadvantaged position, so in that case, he might as well charge straight in. Yimo gathered some Kai again and, at the same time, he threw out 3 nails while preparing to grab the popper of the whip. Hu Qiu was shocked. He didn't think that someone would dare to even try grabbing the popper of his whip in his flurry of attacks. You're asking to die, Hu Qiu sneered as the whip in his hand attacked faster. The countless shadows of the whip made it impossible for people to see clearly. 3 nails had shot over, but Hu Qiu had already felt it. He also understood that Yimo wanted to trade damage for damage, and unless he retreated with his whip, the nails would hit his body. Hu Qiu sneered, trade damage for damage? He actually didn't take back the whip in his hand, and just sidestepped his body. One of the 3 nails was dodged while the other 2 hit accurately on the side of his left chest. Hu Qiu took 2 nails and still didn't take the whip back. He knew that Yimo was powerful, so he took 2 nails just to be able to land a whip attack on him. The power of his whip was tremendous and very fast too. Not only was he absolutely confident that Yimo couldn't grab it, but he also felt that Yimo would definitely be seriously injured after that. That damage wasn't something that 2 mere nails could compare to. However, Hu Qiu wasn't a cultivator, so he didn't know something like spirit sense existed. By the time he reacted, Yimo had already accurately grabbed the popper of his whip. A strong power passed over. Yimo felt his chest pulsed and immediately knew that it wasn't good. Although he grabbed the whip, the side effects of treating Ning Qingxue had come. He even felt a fit of nausea. Yimo knew that he couldn't hold on for long and didn't dare to drag it out. While Hu Qiu was startled, he focused the last bit of his Kai and kicked Hu Qiu's chest. At this moment, Hu Qiu finally realized that Yimo could find the real whip amongst all those shadows and grabbed it, which made him wondering if he was a dark level master. You're a dark level. Hu Qiu pointed at Yimo and spoke these few words before spewing out blood from his mouth like crazy. Then he collapsed and was dead before he had even reached the ground. Yimo gave out a long sigh of relief, thinking that today was too dangerous as he had almost lost his life here. He still wanted to capture this brother Hu and ask him about some things, but it was already the 2nd time that he had overestimated himself that night. There really were powerful people everywhere in this world, it was just that he hadn't met them yet. According to Hu Qiu's words before his death, there might even be a level higher than his so-called dark level. Yimo could feel a fit of dizziness coming and walked out holding on the wall. In the room not far away, there should be the son of Qian Longqiu, Qian Shiping, who was assaulting those 2 young girls. Yimo kicked open the room and pulled out this Qian Shiping. Who are you? How dare you? Qian Shiping was pulled out in his dreams. He was startled for a moment and looked at the weak-looking Yimo. He thought of his situation and was immediately about to rage. The person who kills you. Yimo gasped for breath. Kicking open the door was quite burdensome. Kill me. Ha ha ha, do you know who I am? Kill me, and you will have nowhere to hide even if you flee throughout the entire country. You think? Qian Shiping was still being arrogant until a metal nail pierced his forehead. He still didn't believe as he died that the person in front of him would dare to kill him since his dad was Qian Longqiu. However, his consciousness had already begun to be obscured. Yimo didn't dare to waste any more time. He felt that he was becoming weaker and weaker, So he walked into the underground floor and, as he saw 3 people still kneeling down, he shot out 3 more nails without hesitation. The 3 didn't even have time to react before they were dead. There was still another room with 2 people, but Yi Mo didn't bother with it. It was probably Chen Shiping's underlings. Leave quickly, that was the only thing in Yi Mo's mind. He took too much risk for one day. He hadn't expected Hu Qiu to be that strong, even stronger than he had thought. If that Hu Qiu wasn't too confident in his whip, it was questionable if Yi Mo would even be able to walk out today. Chapter 77, Hesitant Yun Bing. Chapter 77, Hesitant Yun Bing rubbed her fatigued eyes as her mind wandered elsewhere. Ever since the thing that had happened 8 years ago, she had always been unwilling to return to Beijing, and her boyfriend also left her due to that thing. However, the one who assaulted her was still roaming free in Beijing. Even the 7-year-old Ting Ting was taken away forcefully by their family. The reason she hadn't slept for the whole night was that her boyfriend from those years ago, Feng Rong, came back from America. 8 years ago, after that thing happened, he had never appeared again. Afterward, when she knew that he went to America, she was really hurt at the time since he had left without notice when she needed him the most. However, today he actually came back and requested her to come to Beijing. She had seen it when she opened an email on her computer earlier and realized that it had been sent by Feng Rong. He explained to her that he didn't even know what had happened to her at that time because the next day, he had been sent to America by his family, and he wasn't able to contact her again. Now, the first thing he did when he came back was to find her and even had to ask for her email address from other people when he came back to Beijing. He told Yun Bing that no matter what had happened, he wouldn't mind and that he still loved her. When Yun Bing saw Feng Rong's email, her first thought was to delete it, but seeing Feng Rong's love in his words and that she might still have feelings toward her first love, Yun Bing hesitated. She was scared of the person who assaulted her those years ago, and if Feng Rong still loved her, he could have taken her to America, and she would have left that nightmare behind. If she hadn't known about the misunderstanding with Yi Mo last time, she would have perhaps gone to Beijing, but she felt guilty. Yi Mo had saved her, and she wanted to say thank you in front of him at the very least. However, she had never been able to even catch a glimpse of him since that encounter in school. Although Su Jingwen told her that Yi Mo was on bad terms with a major power and couldn't show himself, Yun Bing kept fantasizing that she would be able to see him once in Ninghai. Otherwise, even if she left Ninghai, she would still feel unrested at heart. Another reason she still didn't want to move was that she didn't want to remember the traumatic memories. She felt scared toward Beijing from the bottom of her heart. Now that Feng Rong came back, should she go or not? Although she still resented him, since he said that he didn't know, and the first thing he did when he came back was to look for her, it made Yun Bing feel that she was still remembered. After all these years, she had become a forgotten corner. Although her cold personality gave her fewer troubles, every time she came back home, she felt lonely in her cold room. She would reminisce the small things in her first love. However, was it really true that Feng Rong did not know what had happened? Even if he didn't, did his family not tell him? And not a single message in 8 years, how was this possible? Yun Bing suddenly didn't want to think about that anymore. After thinking for a long while, Yun Bing sighed. She eventually decided to have a look at Beijing. After all, Ting Ting was still there. Although she was very scared of that person, sometimes, avoiding wasn't necessarily the best solution. She opened a file and prepared to write a letter for Su Jingwen to give to Yi Mo. When Yun Bing opened up a file, the bottom corner of her screen showed a news. She was about to close it when the image that her eyes saw seemed familiar. Although it wasn't clear, Yun Bing still felt this was familiar. She immediately opened the news. Ninghai Master, Shi Ying, crushed the trainer of the Korean-style Taekwondo club. The flashy title and the images below stunned her. She really felt that that person looked like Yi Mo, but his face wasn't clear enough. And, the name on there was Shi Ying, not Yi Mo. Although Yun Bing didn't really care about things that happened at the school, she still heard about the Korean-style club, but she was already past the years of raging adolescence, so she only took notice of it and left it there. She didn't think that a Shi Ying would suddenly appear in Ninghai and beat that Pu Dongheng with only one move. Usually, Yun Bing would leave it there after reading it, but this Shi Ying looked a bit like Yi Mo, so Yun Bing immediately logged onto the news page of the university. At this moment, she finally understood what popular was. Looking at the time, it was 4 a.m., but the forum was still full of people. The top post had been clicked over 1 million times already, and there were thousands of replies at the bottom. The title was very clear, Shi Ying, our handsome man. Every time she refreshed, there would be more comments. Okay, I'll admit, I admire Shi Ying, but I guarantee that I'm not gay. Carrying the Shi ***ed bucket into the dining hall. 1. I'm sure that brother Shi Ying is the strongest in Ninghai. Sitting on the grave smoking the loneliness. Wow, let me tell you, I have a personal signature from brother Shi Ying, get jealous. Clear water. I was happy I had a place to stand. Shi Ying, I'm really in love with you, what should I do from now? Who is changing the mark on my epitaph? Who captured the recording our brother Shi Ying like this? I heavily object. Wearing underwear. There were actually thousands of replies below. Yun Bing didn't read all of them and just opened the video at the top. The scene where Yimo fought Pu Dongheng immediately showed. Obviously, this was HQ recording. Pu Dongheng's face was very clear, but Yimo's face was always slightly obscured. The fighting scene was very short. Within a clash, Pu Dongheng was kicked flying. Yun Bing was stunned, seeing the clip. Although it wasn't very long, she felt that this person was Yimo. But why was it that in the same recording, Yimo's face was always obscured, but other scenes were very clear? Looking at the time, it was already 4:40 am. Yun Bing couldn't sit down anymore. What if it was Yimo and she had missed this opportunity? Thinking about this, Yun Bing quickly got downstairs and drove the car toward the Ninghai Technology University. It was in the morning, and there were still cars on the road, but not much, so Yun Bing took a shortcut and didn't see anyone on the road for a long time, and decided to drive very fast. However, a stumbling figure on the side of the road almost crashed into Yun Bing's car, and from her rear mirror, she saw that figure fall onto the road after she had driven her car past. Although she was sure her car didn't touch that person, Yun Bing still drove back and opened the window. Are you okay? The person on the ground didn't answer. Using the dim yellow road lights, Yun Bing saw the blood on this person. She was shocked. Did she actually bump into this person? Fearing that she crashed into someone, Yun Bing quickly got off the car and helped the man on the ground to get up. However, when she saw this person's face, Yun Bing was truly frightened. The person that was laying in her arms was Yimo. How did he become like this? The clothes on his back were ripped, and there was a long gash in which the bones could be seen. His face was very pale, and at this moment, Yimo had his eyes closed. He was obviously unconscious. Yun Bing became worried. Although she didn't know how Yimo became like this, she knew that Yimo's condition was severe. She quickly dragged Yimo into the car. Yun Bing's first thought was to drive Yimo to the hospital, but Su Jingwen's words rung in her ears again. Yimo was on the bad side of a big power and had nowhere to hide, so he ran out of Ninghai. If she sent him to the hospital now, would that person know? Notes. 1. Those are the usernames of the people on the forums. Chapter 78. Whose blood? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Yun Bing was sweating profusely until she finally managed to drag Yimo into her room. Luckily, it was 5 a.m. and was pretty much the darkest period before dawn. No one in her district got up that early, and therefore no one had noticed her. Although she didn't know who Yimo got into conflict with, she still decided to park her car in the parking so that people wouldn't suspect her. She carefully closed the door and parked the car before coming back to carry Yimo onto the bed. She reached out her hand and touched Yimo's nose, and there was still warm air coming in and out, so finally, Yun Bing was able to rest her heart as she thought that he should be just temporarily unconscious. She got a tub of hot water and decided to wash Yimo. After she had taken off Yimo's first layer of clothes, she arrived at his underwear covered in blood but ended up being too embarrassed to take them off for him and didn't even dare to look. She grabbed a towel and covered it, and only then did she dare to help clean Yimo. The wound on Yimo's back looked very severe. Yun Bing couldn't imagine what could cause such a deep wound. Although Yimo's wound was very deep, his muscles were extraordinarily strong. If Yun Bing didn't see Yimo's firm muscles for herself, She wouldn't even believe such a quiet-looking Yimo would have this body of muscles that looked so aesthetic. Yun Bing felt her face blush, and the hand she used to wipe Yimo with was shaky. She had never had the experience of seeing a man's naked torso. Even when she had been paired and became pregnant 8 years ago, she was drugged and unconscious. However, her family was so scared of that family's power that with just one sentence, they didn't dare to allow her to abort the child. She didn't blame her family because they indeed couldn't mess with that family. Even now when she thought about it, Yun Bing felt shaky. She was really scared of that person, so she kept hiding in Ninghai. Even for the new year, she didn't want to return to Beijing. The instant Yimo had collapsed, he knew things weren't good, and with his strong will, he forced himself to wake up. However, the person he saw when he opened his eyes was actually Yun Bing. Although he didn't have a good impression of her, he knew that he was countless times safer in Yun Bing's hands compared to the Song family. Yimo relaxed and closed his eyes once again into unconsciousness. However, his body was starting to use his spirit Kai to recover his extremely fatigued and damaged to the root body. "You're awake." Yun Bing, who had the towel in her hands, was startled as she saw Yimo open his eyes, so she called out in surprise immediately. However, she then saw that Yimo fainted once again. Yun Bing quickly carried the water away and went back to the room to cover Yimo with blankets before she breathed a sigh of relief. Since he had woken up once, it should mean that he wasn't in a critical condition any longer. Yun Bing, who hadn't slept for the night, also slept beside Yimo's bed. When Ning Qingxue opened her eyes, she discovered that the sun was already out. She laid down and didn't move. Was this heaven already? She didn't feel any pain on her body. On the contrary, she even felt extremely comfortable. Ning Qingxue gasped a sigh of relief. She was finally rid of that endless abyss of pain. She just didn't know if Yimo was well now. But soon, Ning Qingxue felt things weren't right. She was still lying on Yimo's bed, and everything in the room was as they used to be before. Nothing was different. What was this? Ning Qingxue bit the tip of her tongue and felt pain. Did she not die? Ning Qingxue, who was worried in her heart, sat up immediately and once again found out in surprise that all her wounds had healed. She didn't feel any bit of discomfort on her body, and instead, it was filled with vigor and spirit. The little case. Ning Qingxue grabbed the little case and checked inside, but nothing had disappeared. Everything was here. Wait, she remembered clearly that last night, she grabbed the knife and was about to commit suicide, so why was the knife still in the case? Did she lose her memory? This was definitely impossible. Ning Qingxue examined the case and everything inside closely, and she discovered that one bottle had 2 less heart protection pill. She had counted each and every pill multiple times, so she couldn't be wrong. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt scared. She had been injured seriously. How could she heal up in one night? Besides, she clearly remembered she had the knife in her hands and was about to commit suicide. She even remembered the feeling of having pierced in something before she had lost her consciousness, and yet, why was she all right without a single wound? And, why did she still feel pain? It wasn't like she had died at all. Ning Qingxue turned around and saw on her bed that there was indeed a few drops of blood, but she was sure she didn't have a wound that bled on her body, so where did this blood come from? Mom. As soon as Ning Qingxue opened her mouth, the door was opened. Ning Qingxue's mom Lan Yu rushed in. "Qingxue, are you all right?" Before Lan Yu even came in, her voice sounded. She didn't know what had happened the night before, but she had suddenly fallen asleep and slept all the way until 7 or 8 in the morning. Lan Yu almost couldn't forgive herself for her mistake. Qingxue, how did you sit up? Your face. How is it so healthy? You're all right now. Qingxue, you really are all right. Lan Yu already forget that Ning Qingxue had been severely injured and recovered in only one night. In her eyes, it was meant to be that her daughter got better. As for the process, she ignored it automatically. Ning Qingxue saw her mother and knew that she wasn't dreaming and didn't die either. She really did recover, but as for how, she didn't know. After Lan Yu had said all these, she grabbed Ning Qingxue and finally started to think how her daughter got better without any reason. She had been severely wounded, and thinking about this, Lan Yu immediately asked, "Qingxue, what happened to you? How did you recover?" Ning Qingxue shook her head. She didn't understand either. She seemed to have the blurred memory that someone came and treated her last night, but who could cure her serious injury in just one night? Mom, I want to think alone for what had really happened. Ning Qingxue suddenly said. Lan Yu was elated now. Although her daughter's recovery was full of mystery, she still rather would believe that her ancestors protected Qingxue than believing this was impossible. Seeing that Ning Qingxue had said this, she still closely examined Ning Qingxue's back before finally being relieved. I'll cook some kanji for you, you should rest some more, don't move around too much. After her mom had left, Ning Qingxue started to think carefully. She wasn't as optimistic as her mother. There was definitely someone who treated her injuries, but who could have so much ability to cure her completely while she was asleep? This was something even the Hongrui hospital couldn't treat. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue sat up. Since someone treated her last night, didn't that mean her top was taken off? She quickly took off her clothes and looked. It was as she thought, her face immediately went pale. Her top was taken off, even her bras were buttoned wrong. Since that person could see her back, it meant that her chest was also seen. Who was this? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt her body starting to shake. She would rather die than let someone, who she didn't even know, look at her body. Ning Qingxue looked at the few drops of blood on the bed. That wasn't hers, so whose blood would it be? Was it from the person who treated her last night? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Yun Bing was sweating profusely until she finally managed to drag Yi Mo into her room. Luckily, it was 5 a.m. and was pretty much the darkest period before dawn. No one in her district got up that early, and therefore no one had noticed her. Although she didn't know who Yi Mo got into conflict with, she still decided to park her car in the parking so that people wouldn't suspect her. She carefully closed the door and parked the car before coming back to carry Yi Mo onto the bed. She reached out her hand and touched Yi Mo's nose, and there was still warm air coming in and out, so finally, Yun Bing was able to rest her heart as she thought that he should be just temporarily unconscious. She got a tub of hot water and decided to wash Yi Mo. After she had taken off Yi Mo's first layer of clothes, she arrived at his underwear covered in blood but ended up being too embarrassed to take them off for him and didn't even dare to look. She grabbed a towel and covered it, and only then did she dare to help clean Yi Mo. The wound on Yi Mo's back looked very severe. Yun Bing couldn't imagine what could cause such a deep wound. Although Yi Mo's wound was very deep, his muscles were extraordinarily strong. If Yun Bing didn't see Yi Mo's firm muscles for herself, she wouldn't even believe such a quiet-looking Yi Mo would have this body of muscles that looked so aesthetic. Yun Bing felt her face blush, and the hand she used to wipe Yi Mo with was shaky. She had never had the experience of seeing a man's naked torso. Even when she had been paired and became pregnant 8 years ago, she was drugged and unconscious. However, her family was so scared of that family's power that with just one sentence, they didn't dare to allow her to abort the child. She didn't blame her family because they indeed couldn't mess with that family. Even now when she thought about it, Yun Bing felt shaky. She was really scared of that person, so she kept hiding in Ninghai. Even for the new year, she didn't want to return to Beijing. The instant Yi Mo had collapsed, he knew things weren't good, and with his strong will, he forced himself to wake up. However, the person he saw when he opened his eyes was actually Yun Bing. Although he didn't have a good impression of her, he knew that he was countless times safer in Yun Bing's hands compared to the Song family. Yi Mo relaxed and closed his eyes once again into unconsciousness. However, his body was starting to use his spirit Kai to recover his extremely fatigued and damaged to the root body. "You're awake." Yun Bing, who had the towel in her hands, was startled as she saw Yi Mo open his eyes, so she called out in surprise immediately. However, she then saw that Yi Mo fainted once again. Yun Bing quickly carried the water away and went back to the room to cover Yi Mo with blankets before she breathed a sigh of relief. Since he had woken up once, it should mean that he wasn't in a critical condition any longer. Yun Bing, who hadn't slept for the night, also slept beside Yi Mo's bed. When Ning Qingxue opened her eyes, she discovered that the sun was already out. She laid down and didn't move. Was this heaven already? She didn't feel any pain on her body. On the contrary, she even felt extremely comfortable. Ning Qingxue gasped a sigh of relief. She was finally rid of that endless abyss of pain. She just didn't know if Yi Mo was well now. But soon, Ning Qingxue felt things weren't right. She was still lying on Yi Mo's bed, and everything in the room was as they used to be before. Nothing was different. What was this? Ning Qingxue bit the tip of her tongue and felt pain. Did she not die? Ning Qingxue, who was worried in her heart, sat up immediately and once again found out in surprise that all her wounds had healed. She didn't feel any bit of discomfort on her body, and instead, it was filled with vigor and spirit. The little case. Ning Qingxue grabbed the little case and checked inside, but nothing had disappeared, everything was here. Wait, she remembered clearly that last night, she grabbed the knife and was about to commit suicide, so why was the knife still in the case? Did she lose her memory? This was definitely impossible. Ning Qingxue examined the case and everything inside closely, and she discovered that one bottle had 2 less heart protection pill. She had counted each and every pill multiple times so she couldn't be wrong. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt scared. She had been injured seriously. How could she heal up in one night? Besides, she clearly remembered she had the knife in her hands and was about to commit suicide. She even remembered the feeling of having pierced in something before she had lost her consciousness, and yet, why was she all right without a single wound? And, why did she still feel pain? It wasn't like she had died at all. Ning Qingxue turned around and saw on her bed that there was indeed a few drops of blood, but she was sure she didn't have a wound that bled on her body, so where did this blood come from? Mom. As soon as Ning Qingxue opened her mouth, the door was opened. Ning Qingxue's mom Lan Yu rushed in. Qingxue, are you all right? Before Lan Yu even came in, her voice sounded. She didn't know what had happened the night before, but she had suddenly fallen asleep and slept all the way until 7 or 8 in the morning. Lan Yu almost couldn't forgive herself for her mistake. Qingxue, how did you sit up? Your face. How is it so healthy? You're all right now. Qingxue, you really are all right. Lan Yu already forget that Ning Qingxue had been severely injured and recovered in only one night. In her eyes, it was meant to be that her daughter got better. As for the process, she ignored it automatically. Ning Qingxue saw her mother and knew that she wasn't dreaming and didn't die either. She really did recover, but as for how, she didn't know. After Lan Yu had said all these, she grabbed Ning Qingxue and finally started to think how her daughter got better without any reason. She had been severely wounded, and thinking about this, Lan Yu immediately asked, Qingxue, what happened to you? How did you recover? Ning Qingxue shook her head. She didn't understand either. She seemed to have the blurred memory that someone came and treated her last night, but who could cure her serious injury in just one night? Mom, I want to think alone for what had really happened. Ning Qingxue suddenly said. Lan Yu was elated now. Although her daughter's recovery was full of mystery, she still rather would believe that her ancestors protected Qingxue than believing this was impossible. Seeing that Ning Qingxue had said this, she still closely examined Ning Qingxue's back before finally being relieved. I'll cook some kanji for you, you should rest some more, don't move around too much. After her mom had left, Ning Qingxue started to think carefully. She wasn't as optimistic as her mother. There was definitely someone who treated her injuries, but who could have so much ability to cure her completely while she was asleep? This was something even the Hongrui hospital couldn't treat. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue sat up. Since someone treated her last night, didn't that mean her top was taken off? She quickly took off her clothes and looked. It was as she thought, her face immediately went pale. Her top was taken off, even her bras were buttoned wrong. Since that person could see her back, it meant that her chest was also seen. Who was this? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt her body starting to shake. She would rather die than let someone, who she didn't even know, look at her body. Ning Qingxue looked at the few drops of blood on the bed. That wasn't hers, so whose blood would it be? Was it from the person who treated her last night? Rate translation quality no comments. Be the first. Chapter 79. Was it Yi Mo? Qingxue, you're all right? A voice full of surprise sounded at the door. Li Mumei just pushed the door open and came in, and behind her was the still beaming with joy, Lan Yu. Even Su Jingwen was here with the 2 nurses behind her who looked at Ning Qingxue in disbelief. Come in. Ning Qingxue focused her mind. Although she was still distressed, she decided not to think of it for now. What happened? Qingxue, let me look at your back. Li Mumei had seen Ning Qingshue's wound before, now Ning Qingxue suddenly recovered. Although she didn't understand, she was still genuinely happy. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "No need to look, I can feel it, I'm really better. I don't know what happened yesterday." She originally wanted to say that someone had cured her last night, but when the words came to mouth, she swallowed it down. Although Lan Yu had examined her, she still wasn't sure and went behind Ning Qingxue. She carefully opened her daughter's clothes, and of course, she saw that her back had recovered to its previous clean white skin with no flaws at all. Only now was she sure that her daughter had truly recovered. She was so excited that she almost shed tears and thanked God that her daughter recovered in one night. The two nurses excitedly came over and helped Ning Qingxue do a simple checkup and discovered that Ning Qingxue was really cured. Other people didn't know how bad Ning Qingshue's injuries were, but these two nurses knew clearly since they had been the ones taking care of Ning Qingxue. However, they didn't expect that such heavy wounds would suddenly be cured. There was nothing more mysterious than this. Was it a wrong diagnosis? When Ning Qingxue heard that the doctors were coming over, she immediately refused another checkup. She knew her body better than anyone else. She was 100% healthy right now but didn't want the whole world to know about this. Ning Zhongfei flew over to Ninghai on that day. He was happier than anyone else for her daughter's sudden recovery. He only had one daughter, and she was a treasure to him. However, Ning Qingxue still refused her family's requests to leave Ninghai and still wanted to stay there. As for the person who treated her last night, she thought about it and had a vague impression. She started to remember that after she had finished recording her will and wanted to commit suicide, her knife didn't seem to have pierced into her own throat, but instead, it had pierced into another person's arm, and afterward, she had immediately fainted. Was that person Yi Mo? Or was it that she was thinking about him too much and pretended the person that night to be him? Since when did Yi Mo know how to cure wounds? And even how did he have that much ability? Ning Qingxue suddenly remembered that day when Yi Mo had a stall on the street to practice medicine. Was it really him? Did he really know medicine? If it was him, then the blood on the bed should be left by him. Seeing her mom and the others were leaving, Ning Qingxue called out to Li Mumei. Although she could get up now, and her body condition was excellent, she didn't want to overdo it in case everyone noticed it. "Mumei, can you help me analyze the blood on this cloth?" Ning Qingxue cut off the blood stain on the bed and gave it to Li Mumei as she wanted to know if this blood was the same as Yi Mo's. Although she couldn't be 100% sure it was Yi Mo's through blood type, at least that pointed her in a direction. If this was his blood, then she would know who the person treated her was, and the person who looked at her body would also be him. In that case, she would feel much peaceful in her heart. Li Mumei took over the cloth but didn't ask anything. If Ning Qingxue didn't want to say anything, she wouldn't say it even if she had asked. Last night, Ning Qingshue's sudden recovery was the biggest thing for her parents. However, for the students in Ninghai, Shi Ying beating Piyu Dongheng was the biggest news. However, compared to these two things, an earthquake erupted amongst the authority due to the murder in the mansion. This was because the people murdered were very influential. One was the young master Song Shouwen of the Song family. The other was scarier because his name was Qian Shiping. Qian Shiping wasn't anything special himself, but his father was called Qian Longtu and had a title, someone who could shake the ground with a step. If the mountain group in Japan and the black-gloved clan from the west were influential, then Nanqing was the most influential in the east. And Qian Longtu was the boss of Nanqing. Qian Shiping was his one and only son, and he had him at 40. Qian Longtu's real name was Qian Baihe, someone from the Huzhong state. He joined the underground world at the age of 11, and until now, there was a place for him even on the world stage. He had his own private army, however, it was a hired army that stayed in Africa, and he, himself, remained at an extremely grandiose mansion in Africa. Nanqing's things basically didn't need his management. Typically, his henchmen took care of everything and just needed to give him a report. Even the heads of small countries didn't dare to offend the leader of Nanqing, but today, his only son was murdered in Ninghai. This was absolutely an earthquake. Whether it was Song Shaowen's death or Qian Shiping's death, it wasn't something that the government authorities here could handle. Yun Bing was woken up by the phone. It was already 9 a.m. She looked at Yi Mo, who was still sleeping like last night. However, his pale face had a sliver of ruddiness. Yun Bing felt assured and picked up the phone. The phone was from her colleague Wang Yu, asking her why she didn't go to the school today. Yun Bing hurriedly asked Wang Yu to apply a leave for her. Then, she used her towel and wiped up Yi Mo's body before preparing to cook some food. In case he happened to wake up, he could have some. Since Yi Mo was rescued by her from last night, he had remained unconscious. He only opened his eyes once but continued to sleep, and since Yun Bing didn't dare to send him to the hospital, she didn't know what to do anymore. She didn't know if that Shi Ying from last night was Yi Mo. Yun Bing opened up her laptop once again and wanted to search on the news forum of the university. But the news that appeared in front of her eyes almost made her throw her mouse. Last night, in a private mansion, 6 people were murdered. Last night, wasn't that when Yi Mo was injured? Did he do it? Yun Bing thought of before when Yi Mo had beaten Zhen Wenxiao and her schoolmate until they became mentally disabled, and was almost certain this event was also done by Yi Mo. Why was he so violent? Yun Bing turned around and looked at Yi Mo complicatedly. She then searched the news of the murder again. As expected, on some small unofficial website, she uncovered the truth. Last night, because 2 young masters of big families took away 2 girls and *ped them in the mansion, someone attacked that place and killed 6 people. Only the 2 girls weren't killed. Yun Bing sighed. She was sure it was done by Yi Mo. He liked to fight against this injustice. It was the same with her last time. However, last time he didn't kill, but this time he did. Did he have violent tendencies? Regardless of whether Yi Mo had violent tendencies or not, he was someone who had saved her life, and to her, he had even saved something more important than life. Furthermore, for the event of the previous night, she also stood on Yi Mo's side. However, she believed that Yi Mo shouldn't kill. Killing people so freely was too absurd in this society. Yun Bing also rejoiced for not sending Yi Mo to the hospital. If she had, then he would have been already exposed. Chapter 80. Confirmed it's him. Chapter 80. Confirmed it's him. Yun Bing hadn't left the house for the entire day. She didn't even go out to buy vegetables. She could only focus on when Yi Mo would wake up and kept heating the kanji again and again, but he still didn't have any signs of waking up. If Yi Mo's breathing wasn't normal, she would have thought that he wouldn't survive. She had never seen someone unconscious for so long. But even if she didn't go out, she still knew that what was happening outside wasn't trivial, as she could see the street full of police cars patrolling every so often. She really couldn't understand who Yi Mo had killed and why it would cause such a ruckus. In the house Ning Qingxue lived at, other than Su Jingwen and her parents, everyone else had left, so Ning Qingxue got up and ate something. She was staring at that silver heart grass when Li Mumei suddenly ran in. "Qingxue, you can get up." Li Mumei was joyful from the bottom of her heart. "Yeah, I feel much better, Mumei, what happened?" Ning Qingxue looked at the hurried Li Mumei and asked. Li Mumei then realized that she was going to say something. "Qingxue, I heard that Song Shaotan was killed in Ninghai last night. The person who killed him also killed 5 other people. However, one seemed to have a bigger background than Song Shaotan, but I don't know who it was." Ning Qingxue thought for a moment and asked, "Mumei, do you know who the other people are?" Li Mumei shook her head and said, "I don't know either. I have no news of the other people. I only knew from a friend." However, this thing got pretty big, and many journalists came to Ninghai. I know a lot of journalists from Beijing, so I might have more information tomorrow. Why did Song Shaotan come to Ninghai? Was he the one who ordered people to injure her? Then who killed Song Shaotan? Ning Qingxue suddenly thought of Yi Mo and immediately asked, "Mumei, did you get the blood analysis back?" "Yeah." Li Mumei gave the report to Ning Qingxue. Ning Qingxue looked, and she became quickly excited. "What's wrong?" "Qingxue?" Li Mumei hurriedly asked. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "No. Nothing, I'm going in to sit. I'll come out later." Then, she walked into the room. Li Mumei looked at Ning Qingxue and thought that she had just recovered and might be feeling tired, so she didn't bother too much. However, Ning Qingxue was elated because the blood type was exactly the same as Yi Mo's. They were both B-type. Although it was far from sufficient to know if it was Yi Mo through blood type, Ning Qingxue still firmly believed this was him. She seemed to feel Yi Mo came back. Was he related to the incident of their death last night? If it wasn't Yi Mo, who else would dare to touch the Song family's people? Yi Mo dared to kill even Song Shouan, so why not Song Xiaotan too? Besides, he had the motive for it. Knowing that it was entirely possible that Yi Mo came back to save her, she finally felt relieved in her heart. After all, she had already admitted that Yi Mo was her husband, so if he had seen her body, it wouldn't really matter. However, Ning Qingxue suddenly felt unrested. If Yi Mo came to Ninghai and killed Song Xiaotan, then wouldn't he be in a very dangerous situation right now? What if he still hadn't escaped out of Ninghai? Ning Qingxue became worried, and now, she wished that the person who came last night wasn't Yi Mo. Because if Yi Mo really did it, then he wouldn't be able to escape from Ninghai with the Song family's power. Qingxue, you're all right? Xu Wei asked in surprise. She knew her injuries were grave. The hospital even gave out her final days, but now, Ning Qingxue stood in front of her perfectly fine. What was this? Yeah, I've recovered already, perhaps the hospital misdiagnosed. My injuries weren't that serious, Ning Qingxue nodded and said. Xu Wei was dubious. Ning Qingxue went to the best hospital in Ninghai, one that was famous even in the country. How could they make such a serious mistake? Besides, she had seen with her own eyes Ning Qingxue being hit with that stick. Seeing that Xu Wei didn't really believe her, Ning Qingxue quickly changed the subject. How come you didn't go to work again today? Sigh, why are your tones exactly the same? Yesterday, Xu Wei suddenly stopped. She suddenly remembered that Yi Mo told her yesterday not to tell Ning Qingxue, but she had almost forgotten today. Although Xu Wei had stopped her words in time, Ning Qingxue had discerned it and asked, what happened yesterday? Did Yi Mo come back? At the same time, Ning Qingxue had subconsciously grabbed Xu Wei's hands. Xu Wei looked at her hands that were tightly clutched by Ning Qingxue. She knew she had spilled it and had no way to keep hiding it. She sighed and said, yesterday Yi Mo came back and looked at the flower pots for half a day. Then, he asked me about you and left. He probably went to the hospital to see you. What, did you not see him? Ning Qingxue suddenly let go of Xu Wei's hands and mumbled, it really was him, he's alright. He came back, so he was really the one to. Qingxue, go rest, you just recovered, don't walk around everywhere. Xu Wei, we'll eat together later, her mom and I are cooking right now. Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue who stood at the doorway and walked over. Qingxue, why is your face red? Are you hot? Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue's face was as red as an apple and asked concerningly. Ning Qingxue was thinking about Yi Mo who came over last night and didn't know if he heard her words. Thinking about how she had called him Laro Gong, she felt really embarrassed and hoped he didn't hear it. But now, she was 100% sure that the one who came last night was Yi Mo. She felt comfortable and even a little bit of sweetness in her heart. Now that Li Mumei asked, Ning Qingxue immediately thought that since Yi Mo came yesterday, then he must have killed Song Xiaotan to avenge her. Thinking about the events from last night, she realized that Yi Mo might still be escaping and immediately felt worried. Qingxue, Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue's face change rapidly and felt more worried. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, I'm fine, Mumei, you told me earlier that you know a lot of journalists in Beijing. Can you invite one out and let me see tonight? Ning Qingxue wanted to know what happened last night through the journalist as a way to inadvertently find out about Yi Mo's situation. Qingxue, you want to see a journalist? Don't you hate them? Li Mumei spoke, but seeing Ning Qingxue didn't say anything else, she immediately continued, okay, I'll ask tonight. If all goes well, I should be able to get one or two. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.